Welcome to this Java course for beginners. This course will help you acquire essential Java programming skills quickly and effectively. Starting from absolute scratch, you'll learn everything you need to know, from setting up your tools to mastering the core components of Java 17. Whether you're aspiring to land your first programming job or just adding another language to your coding repertoire, this course promises value at every step. Alex is an experienced course creator, and he does a great job teaching the basics of Java in this course.
Hello, my name is Alex and I will be your instructor in this course. In this course you will learn Java, which is one of the most popular programming languages in the world, used by many big companies. So if you want to get a job or to build an app, Java should be your choice. For who is this course? This course is for complete beginners and also for experienced programmers who want to add a new language to their skills. So let's get started. Now it's time to download and install an IDE, and for this course I will use an IDE called IntelliJ IDE, which is an IDE made by a company called JetBrains. Now you may be wondering, what is an IDE? An IDE stands for an Integrated Development Environment, and it's basically the tool that you're going to use to write our code in. And IntelliJ IDE is like a text editor, but a very sophisticated one, because it has a lot of features like highlighting our code, showing real-time errors and suggestions. You can run and compile your code just by a few clicks. In other words, it's making the process of writing code easier and better. Therefore, let's download IntelliJ IDE. So I'm going to open my browser. You should open your browser. And in the search tab, I will type IntelliJ IDE, press enter. We click here on this link, download IntelliJ IDE, because this is going to take us on the downloading page. And here you'll see two options: Ultimate, which is paid but has more features, and Community, which is free but has less features. And this is enough for our purposes. Also, you may have noticed that Windows is highlighted here. This is because the IntelliJ that we are going to download here is for Windows. But if you have macOS or Linux, you should download the particular version for your system. Now, I want you to pay attention at the latest version when I'm currently recording this video is. So it's 22.2.3. And if you look at the system requirements for this version, you need to have a 64-bit version of Windows in order for this version of IntelliJ IDE to work. Otherwise, it will not work. Now, let's download IntelliJ IDE. And now the downloading is starting on the top right hand side. And if you have a different browser, you will see the downloading starting in a different place. Once the downloading is finished, just open this file. I'm going to close the browser, and now the installation will start. Now it's asking us if you allow this app to make changes to our device. Click on yes. Here we need to click on next, and this is the folder location where IntelliJ IDE is going to be installed. You can change this location by clicking on browse, and it will show you the folders where you can put IntelliJ IDE, but I'm going to keep the default location, so I'm going to click on next. Here I can create a desktop shortcut, so I'm going to check this to create a desktop shortcut, and I'm going to click on next, and then I'm going to click on install. And now IntelliJ IDE is going to be installed, and as you can see on the left hand side here, it already appeared. Alright, now the installation is finished. Just click on this box to run IntelliJ IDE Community Edition and click on finish. And now, if you see this Windows popping up, this is because it wants to import the previous settings of the previous installation of IntelliJ IDE. But most of you will not have a previous installation of IntelliJ IDE. This will be the first time when you install IntelliJ IDE. So you need to click Do Not Import Settings and click on OK. And now IntelliJ IDE is going to start. Alright, so this is the welcome window of IntelliJ IDE, and this is the place from which you're going to create all of our projects. Now, let's go on the left hand side where it says Customize, click, and we click here where it says Color Theme, and we click on this drop-up menu. And from here I'm going to select IntelliJ Light, because this is better for tutorials, but you can keep the dark theme if you want. Also, I'll show you in a separate video how to add more themes, not just the themes provided by IntelliJ IDE. Let's go back on the left hand side, click on projects. Let's click on new project because we need to configure now the JDK. Alright, as you can see here, it says that there is no SDK, and what that means is that first, what is the SDK? SDK stands for Software Development Kit, and as you can see here, it says JDK, and JDK stands for Java Development Kit, and the SDK is basically the Java Development Kit. However you want to call it, what this thing is. This contains the tools that we need for our app to be able to run and compile our code. And this JDK contains those tools. So you need to click here where it says download JDK. And the latest version, when you click on the download JDK, it's open this window and you have version, vendor, and location. And for the version, we're going to choose version 17. And now you may be wondering why version 17, because the latest version is 19. This is because the version 17 is the version which has long-term support. And that means that it will receive bug fixes and updates for several years to come without you needing to switch to a new version whenever it's released. Next we have the vendor, and this is the company which provides the SDK, and I'm going to choose Amazon Corretto because it's a good vendor. Next we have the location where the JDK is going to be installed, and it's good to remember this location. And then I'm going to click on download, and it's going to add the JDK, because without the JDK, the IntelliJ IDE, it's like an empty text editor. It doesn't have the tools to write our code and to compile our code or to run our code. So this is what the JDK is. It's like a packet with all the tools that the IntelliJ IDE needs in order to be able to write code and to run our code. Now I'm going to click on download, and as you can see, it will download and it will be added automatically here. Alright, so now we have the JDK set up here. It's Amazon Corretto 17. And now we're ready to create our first project, but we're going to create our first project in the next video. So I'm going to click on cancel here and see you in the next video. Alright, now it's time to create our first program. And there is a tradition in programming that our first program should be to output the text hello world in the console. And this is what we're going to do in this video. Therefore, I'm going to open IntelliJ IDE. You should open your IDE. Click on create new project on the plus button. And first we have the name, and the name of the project, if it has multiple words, every word should start with a capital letter, and you should not have white spaces. This way of naming is called Pascal case. So I'm gonna type hello and with an uppercase letter world, because we have two words. For the language you select Java, for the build system IntelliJ, and as you can see here it says there is no SDK, but if I click here, as you can see down here it says detected SDK, so it detected the JDK that we installed in our previous video, and this will probably be the same for you. So if for whatever reason it's not saying detect the SDKs, just go to add JDK and go to the folder where the JDK is and add the JDK here. But probably it will detect the JDK and you will have the JDK down here like I have. So I'm gonna click there to have the JDK added. Then I'm gonna click on create, and now our project is gonna be created. Let's increase this. And as you can see, our project is creating. We have something on the left hand side. Down here it's working. So we wait a little bit to set up the things. Alright, now our project is ready, and I want to focus on the left hand side, and this thing on the left hand side is called project pane. And here what we are particularly interested is this SRC folder. So click on this greater arrow in front of SRC, and here we have this thing main. This is a class. We'll see what classes are in the future videos, not now. What you need to do here is double click on this main, and that is going to open this, and you'll see some code. Here you have this thing, public, class, main, then we have this public static void main strings. We're going to talk about what is that. And as you can see, it also has this system.out.print line hello world. And if you run now this code, that is going to be output in the console. But let's do it ourselves. So to output something in the console, we simply type here system dot out dot print line, and while we are typing, IntelliJ IDE is giving us suggestions, and it's saying system, when I put that, is saying, do you mean print line? And that, yes, so yes, if you want to fill in that for you, so if you press enter, it will fill in that for you. And inside the parentheses of the print line, I'm going to put double quotation, double pair of quotation marks, and the text that I want to be output in the console, hello, in this case, world. And very important is to have a semicolon at the end of the code, because if you don't put a semicolon, as you can see here, you have an underline and it says that expected semicolon, so you need to put a semicolon. So put semicolon. Now, to run our program, to see the output in the console, we can do it in two ways. We can right click inside the class. We're going to see what classes are, and you can click here, run main, or you can click on this run button, which is up here on the top right hand side corner. So let's run it from here. Now it will open the console and it will output the text hello world. Alright, so it's open the console and have hello world. Let's put an exclamation mark there. Let's run it again. And we have hello world. So what this thing does, it takes the input that is passed here and it will output in the console. And if I remove one of the quotation marks, look what happens. I have an error because we need to put double quotation marks in order to work. So if I put here a single quotation mark, again, it will not work. You need to have double quotation marks around the text that you want to be output in the console. And this entire line of code, its only job is to output whatever you pass inside the parentheses of it. In this case, hello world. But you can change this text. You can put here hello Alex, or type your name there. So if you run this, as you can see, it will say, wait, it will say hello Alex. So now it's printing hello Alex. And this whole thing that we have here, it's called a function. And we'll see what functions are in the future video. But a function simply is a collection of code grouped together which can do a specific task. In this case, our function can do the specific task to output in the console this text hello world. You type system dot out dot print line parentheses. Inside the parentheses you put double pair of quotation marks and the text that you want to be output, and it's going to output that in the console. And in the future videos, because as you can see we have this public static void main, we have these strings, we have those square brackets, we're going to see what all of those are in the next videos. But for now, we create our first program, we output in the console hello world, and everything worked fine. So now I'm going to end the video and see you in the next video. So as I said in the previous video, in this video I will explain to you what all this code means. So first we have, as you can see, those public, class, and we have again public, and we have static and void, and all of those, as you can see, they are colored in blue. And they are colored in blue because this is the way in which IntelliJ is telling us that they are keywords. And a keyword is a reserved word which has a very specific meaning, which cannot be used in other contexts than the context of a keyword. So first we have public, and this is called an access modifier. So what this public is going to do, whatever comes after the public, it will be publicly accessible. This is what this public means. Next we have class, and we'll see what classes are in the future. But for now, we need to know that every function, because down here we have a function, every function that we use in Java has to be part of a class. So we have public, the access modifier, so other parts of the code can access this class because it's public. Then we have the keyword class, which creates a class, and then we have the name of the class. The name of the class is main. Next, we have curly braces, as you can see, and the curly braces are used to create a block of code. And a block of code is, as the name says, a block which contains lines of code. And the block of code begins here and it ends here. It begins with an opening curly brace and with a closing curly brace. And next, down here we have again public, but now we have public and we have static and void. And I'm not going to explain to you what static is for now, because I will explain to you this in a future video, because now I can't, because it will make things too complicated. So we have public again for the function, and what this means is that we can access this function from other part of the code, because it's publicly, so it's public. So this is also an access modifier. Then we have static. I'm going to explain to you in the future videos what this is. And then we have void, and this signifies the return type of this function that we have here, the main function. So what we're saying here is that we have a function which returns nothing. This is what void means. And this function main, as you can see, it's inside the class, because all the code that you create in Java has to be part of a class. So this is why we have main, curly braces, and inside the block of the main we have the function. So the function is inside the block of the main. Now, next we have the name of the function, and the name of the function is main. And this function main, as you'll see, you can create your own functions, but this is a special function because this is the entry point of your app. So every program that you create has to have a main function, otherwise the program will not work. So look what happens if I change the name of the function from main to A, and look what happens with the play button here and with the play button here, which we can use to run our code. So if I put main A, they both disappeared. So this is disabled and now this disappeared. Why? Because now we don't have an entry point, and when the Java compiler tries to run our code, it looks for the main, it's looking for specifically for the main function to execute our code. And next we have parentheses, and we have this string, we have square brackets and args. And what we have here is called the parameter. Again, all of this is going to be explained in different chapters at the correct time, but not now. And then we have again curly braces, so we define now again a block of code, and inside this block of code we have our simple statement. A statement is basically a complete unit of execution. So it's something which can be executed. This is what a statement is. So we have the statement to output this text in the console, and this is part, as you can see, inside the block of the main. So the block of the main starts here with the opening curly brace and ends with the closing curly brace. But this function, as you can see, it's part of the class, of the block of the main class, because if I put this outside, let me show you actually, if I put this outside of the main, look what happens. So let's take it, let's go outside the block of the main, so outside the curly brace, let's put it here. Now we have an error, and it says public static void main, and we have this class main. So it's telling us that we should put this inside the class. So if I copy this now, and if I paste it here, now everything works fine, because all the code, all the functions, as you'll see, have to be in a class in Java. And then we have our simple line of code which outputs hello Alex in the console. So this is how all of this works. Again, if you feel confused by this, don't be, because at the appropriate time I will explain each individual thing in great detail. For now, all we need to know is that you need to have this class main, you need to have this function main in order for your programs to work, because all the code that you're going to write is going to be called from the main function, that we have here. And I didn't talk about this. This is called a parameter, because functions can take input and can work with it, but more on that later when we're going to talk about function specifically. So this is our discussion about what all of this code means. And again, don't be, if you feel confused, it's normal. And if you have questions, just ask me and I will happy answer you. And I will end the video now and see you in the next video. So in the last video we created our first program, and it was a simple program. We just outputted the text hello world in the console. And if you want to make your program to do something useful, you need to store data. And to store data you need to use variables. Therefore, let's create a new project. Let's call it variables. For the language, select Java. For the build system, IntelliJ. Make sure to have the JDK selected here, and also make sure to have this add sample code. And this is gonna add the class main and the main function for us. So let's click on create. Alright, so now our project is created. If I double click on the class main, it will open the file for me. Now let's push this on the next line. Now, what we have here is the code that we had previously, and that is to output the text hello world in the console. And if you run this, you'll see outputted hello world in the console. Alright, so the console opened and we have hello world. And of course you can change this text to print something else. Let's say hello Alex, or type your name there. So if you run this, now it will output hello Alex. Right, so you have hello Alex. Now the problem with this is, let's say that I duplicate this line of code a few times, and I run this code now. Now it will output hello Alex multiple times. So as you can see, it outputted in the console hello Alex multiple times. And let's say that I want to change the value of Alex to a different name, to put here Christian, let's say. In that case, we have to go in every in parentheses of all the system.out.print line, and we have to change the Alex in all the places. And a better way to do this would be to have something in which you can store Alex, and to call that in all the places where you want to use Alex. And when you want to change his value, change his value once where the value is declared, and it's going to be reflected in all the places where it's called. And that is a variable. And we're going to look at the first type of variable, which is a string. And a string is a variable which can store text. So I will type here string. Let's call it name equals, and we put double pair of quotation marks, Alex, and semicolon, of course. Now what I will do, I will delete Alex from here, and I will put hero plus, and I will call the variable name here. So I will type here name, and while I am typing, you see that you have a suggestion. And it's saying, do you mean this v for variable name, which is of type string, which means that it's storing text? And I'm gonna say yes, press enter. So now if I delete those lines of code, not all of them, if I delete only those lines of code, and if I press Ctrl D multiple times, now if you run this, we get hello Alex, hello Alex, hello Alex, hello Alex. And now if I want to change the value of because now what we're doing here is we are outputting something in the console, and we're saying hello plus, so we are concatenating. This is what is this is how it is called. We are concatenating some string to some other string. So we are adding this variable which has the text Alex in it to the text hello. Now, if you want to change the value of Alex, you can go where you declare the variable and decide the double pair of quotation marks. I will type, let's say, Cristian. And now when I run this, it will be reflected in all the places where the variable is used, as you can see. So now it's saying hello Cristian in all the places where the variable is used. So this type of variable string can only store text. So if I try to put here a number, let's say, so let's delete the quotation marks, and I put 3 here, I can't, because so if I put even if I put semicolon, it's underlined in red, and it's saying require type string, meaning text, and you provided int, which is a number. So this string is a data type, and data type means simply what type of data you can store. This is what data type means. So this string variable is or this variable name is of type string, and that means that you can put only text in it. You cannot put numbers. To put numbers, you need to use another type of variable. So let's put here again Alex, or let's put Cristian. Now let's say that I want to also output the age of this person. To do that, as you saw, we cannot put the variable inside the variable name, because it's of type string. What you need to do is to go to the next line, and you need to type here int. So now we are declaring a different type of variable. So now we're creating a different container. If you want to think about this like this, we create a different container in which we can put now numbers. So with string, you can put only text in your variable, as you can see here. And now with int, you can put only numbers, whole numbers. And I will type here a number for the name of the variable. So first we define the type int, the name of the variable number, and I'm gonna put here equals, let's say 23. And now we have no errors. Let's just put semicolon here. Now let's also put here some more text. So let's put plus, quotation marks, let's put a dot, and let's say your age is, and now let's call our variable. So inside the parentheses, but outside the quotation marks, I will put plus, and I will type here number. And let's delete those line of codes to duplicate this code again. So let's let it like this for now. So now if you run this, we have hello Cristian, your age is 23, and let's put a space here to make it look more beautiful. So we get hello Cristian, your age is 23. So now we are concatenating this number to our string here that we have here. So this is what this plus is doing. It's taking this value and it's adding that value to, in a way, what it is actually doing is converting this number in a text, and it's printing your age is 23, and then we have hello Alex, your age is 23. And we did this by using different types of variables, and as you'll see, there are other data types of variables that we can use to store data, but these are the most common used variables, the most common used type of variables that you're gonna use. So we have string for text, and we have int, which is the abbreviation for integer, and we have the name number, and you put the value 23. So this is our introduction discussion about variables, and see you in the next videos. We're going to look at other types of variables, so other types of data that you can put in variables. So see you in the next video. Now it's time to look at the next data types that you can use in Java, and by data types I mean different type of data that can be stored in variables. And we're gonna look specifically at two more data types for storing whole numbers. And we're also gonna look more closely at the int data type. So let's delete this code. Let's also delete the string variable. Now, what is an int? We know that an int is a type of variable which can store whole numbers, but how big the whole numbers can be? So we can put anything here. Actually, you cannot put any number you want. There is a minimum and maximum value which can be stored in an integer data type. Again, integer data type is used for storing whole numbers. So if you put here 22.2, you will have an underline because now you no longer have a whole number. You have a number with a fractional part. So let's delete that. And now, to get the maximum value which can be stored in an int, we type integer with uppercase R, uppercase I, dot, and we type max value. And this line of code that is here, integer.max value, we're going to talk about in the future video what is this. But for now, this is going to give us the maximum value which can be stored specifically in an int, in an integer data type. So I'll type here int max, and there is also a minimum value which can be stored in an int. So I'll type int min equals, I'll type again integer dot, and I'll type min value and semicolon. Now down here I will add a print and system dot out dot print line, and I will print the minimum value and the maximum value. So I'll type here, but let's say that I type here simply, I put double quotation marks and I type max. What do you think will be the output? So if you run this, we get the text max, because whatever you put inside the double quotation mark is considered as text, as string. So it's not a variable which contains a value. So let's delete this. Let's put again double quotation marks and let's type the maximum value for an int equals, and we're gonna type plus, and we're gonna type our max variable from above. Next I will press Ctrl D and I will type here the minimum value, and here I will change it to min. So I'll put here min. Now if you run this, you get the maximum value for an int is, and you have this big number 2,147,000,000 and so on, and then we have the minimum value is minus 2,147,000,000 and so on. So those are the minimum and maximum values can be stored in an integer. If you try to put a number which is bigger than that, you'll end up with an error. So if I try to put here, let's say let's put parentheses here to make it more clear, and I put max plus 1. Look what happens. We get the minimum value output now, because it tried to put this number, which is the maximum number plus 1 in, it tried to output that in the console, and it couldn't, and because of that it outputted the minimum value. So let me show you more specifically how this error is called. So let's delete this, let's delete also. So let's put here plus 1. So now we have a number bigger than the maximum value because you're adding 1 to it. And now if you hover over here, and every time you see something gray out or it's colored, that means that IntelliJ IDE wants to tell you something. And here he's saying numeric overflow in expression. So he's saying, in other words, hey, you cannot put a number bigger than the maximum value which can be stored in an integer. And if you do that, I will as it says, I will overflow. And by overflow means that it will try to put that value in an integer, but it will not it's not going to be able, and it's going to output the minimum value. So let's delete the one from it, from there. And now let's go down here and let's create another type of variable. Let's create now a byte. So we type byte, and let's call this byte max value. I am calling byte max value because if I type here max, we'll have two variables. We have two variables which have the same name, and you can't have this, because if you want to call one of the variables, the compiler or the IntelliJ is not going to know about which variable you're talking about. So let's call this max byte value, and now we'll get the maximum, the value which can be stored in a byte. So we're gonna type here byte dot max value. Then I will press Control. I'm gonna put semicolon. I will press Control D, and I will change this to min byte value. So min byte value. Let's put min, and let's change this to min byte value. And this is again is going to return us the maximum value which can be stored in a byte and a minimum value which can be stored in a byte. So if you run this, actually we get nothing because we need to output something in the console. So let's copy those two that we have here. Let's paste it below, and let's change the maximum value for a byte, and here for a byte also. And let's call our variables, and as you can see they are gray out now, because this is if you have hover, it says that variable max byte value is never used. So whenever you see something colored or gray out, that means that IntelliJ is telling you something. So let's call our variable here. So let's type max byte value and min byte value. So only min byte value. Now if you run this, we get the maximum byte value is 127, and the minimum byte value is minus 128. And this is those min and max for byte are considerably smaller than the int. So the int data type is much bigger than the byte. And there is another data type which is bigger than the integer data type, and we're going to look at that now. So let's look at the next data type which is bigger than an integer, and that is called a long. So let's go down here. I will type long. So this is how we declare it, long. And next I'll give it a name. Let's say let's type max long value equals, and I will type here long dot max value semicolon, and I'll type again long min long value equals long dot min value semicolon. Now let's output in the console the minimum and maximum value which can be stored in a long. So I'll type here system dot out dot print line, and I will type here simply long, or let's type long max value equals, and put a space, plus max long value, Control D, and let's change to, here it should be long, not log, long, and let's change this to min. Now if you run this, as you can see, the maximum value which can be stored in a long is much bigger than the integer, and I don't know how to read this number. And this is the maximum number which can be stored in a long, and this is the minimum value which can be stored in a long. And but let me show you something interesting. So look what happens if I go down here. So I'll go down here, where is the code, and I will declare a variable also long called let's call it my number. And let's say that I try to put here a number which is let's put the maximum value which can be stored in an int. Let's put it inside my long variable. So let's put semicolon. Okay, so everything works fine now. But now if I increase this by 1, look what happens. I get an error. And now you may be wondering, hey, but this number that we have here is much smaller than the number that can be stored in a long, so why you get an error? And this is the important part. This happens because the assume type, which when you type literally a value, when you type a number, is an int. So this is considered to be an integer. This is why you have an error, because if you have a over, it says integer number too large. In order for this literal value, because this is called a literal, and it's a literal because we type this ourselves directly here, and it will treat this as an integer. So no matter what we try to do, it will always be an integer. To be treated as a long and to fit in a long, we need to put L suffix at the end. So I put L. Now everything works fine, but you can also put uppercase L. And sometimes it's good to use uppercase L to not be mistaken with for the lowercase L to not be mistaken with 1. So this is why you should use uppercase L. And now if you run this, actually, as you can see, the error disappeared, and now everything works fine. Alright, so those are the data types for storing whole numbers. In the next video, we're going to look at the other data types called floating point data types. And with those floating data types, we're going to store numbers which have a fractional part. So see you in the next video. Now it's time to look at the next data type that we can use for storing whole numbers, and that is a short. And to declare a short variable, just type short. I'm going to call it max. I'm going to put equals, and then I'm going to type here short with uppercase letter dot max value semicolon. Then I'll type short min equals, and here we're going to type short dot min value semicolon. Now I will type here max dot, and look what I can do. I can put max dot SOT, and it's gonna print in the console the maximum values, and it will generate the system.out.print line for us, and it will put the variable as parameter for our function. So if I press now enter, as you can see, it added SOT. It added our max variable inside the print line. Then I will type here min again dot out SOT, sorry, and now we're gonna print the minimum value. And let's put a text before, so let's put some text here. Let's say max short value equals plus max, then min short value plus, and here we'll put question mark plus min. So let's put an equals here. So now if you run this, the maximum short value is 32,767. and the minimum short value is minus 32,768. So those are the minimum maximum value that can be stored in a short. And depending on what you want to do, you will use short value if you need in a specific scenario. So now I'm gonna end this video and see you in the next video. Now it's time to look at the next two data types for storing numbers, more specifically for storing numbers with a fractional part. And those are called floating point numbers. And we have two types here, float and double. And they differ in the, first they differ in the size. The float has a size of 32 bits and double has a size of 64 bits and consequently a length of 64. And they differ in the precision. A double has a bigger precision than a float. But first let me show you a problem with the code that I typed in the previous video. And the problem is that I forgot to call the min long value in our code. What I did is that I called my long value, my max long value 2 times. So let's change this to min long value. And now everything will be fine. So now if you run this code, now we have our minimum long value. Alright, let's close this and let's delete this code because we don't need this code. Now, to create a floating point number, we're going to use first the float. We're going to type float. This is the keyword. Let's call it number equals, and here I'm going to put 3.14. Now, if I put semicolon, I have an error. I have an underline, and it says required type float provided double. So we have a similar problem with the whole numbers where the assumed type is an int. Here with the floating point number, the assumed number is a double. So if you don't put an f to treat this as a float, it will think that it's a double. So if I delete the f, as you can see, it's thinking that it's a double. But if I put an f at the end, it will treat it as and it will treat it and it will be a float because we have our over number. As you can see, it says float. Now let's create a double, and I will type here double number 2, let's say. In real app, you should give more descriptive names, and generally you should give more descriptive name for your variables. And I will type here 2.0. That's all, and semicolon. And everything will all fine. Now let's see what is the minimum and maximum values, and let's also, by doing this, see the precision of our floating and point of our float and double types. So I will type here first float. Let's delete the code that we have above. Let's call it max float value equals float again dot max value semicolon. Let's press Ctrl D. Let's change this to mean, and let's change here to mean. Let's add the system.out.print, so s with uppercase .out.print line, and I'm gonna type maximum float number equals, and gonna put a space plus, and I'm gonna type here, I'm gonna refer our variable max float. Now I'm gonna press Ctrl D, but now we need to be careful here to call our variables, not like in the previous example where I forgot. Let's type here minimum float number, and let's type here min. Now let's do the same thing for the double, so I type here double max double value equals, again we type double dot max value. I'm gonna press Ctrl D, change this to mean, and let's change this to mean. And let's copy this code. Let's paste it here below. And let's change this to double. Here to double. And let's change this to max double. And mean double here. Now, if you run this code, you get in the output maximum float number, and we have this precision. This is the precision of the floating point number, and this is the precision of the double floating point type for the type of double. As you can see, the precision for the double is much bigger than the precision of a float. And when to use one or the other, it depends on the scenario. If you need more precision, use double. If you don't need a lot of precision, you can use float. So this is our discussion about floating point numbers, about float and double, and see you in the next video. So far in our videos, we only dealt with data types which can store numbers, whole numbers or floating point numbers. And now it's time to look at two different data types, and that is the char and the boolean data type. So I'll delete this code because I don't need this code. And the char data type, we're going to start with the char data type. You create it by typing char. You give a name like all variables. I'm going to call it letter. And in a char data type, you can store only one element, only one character. So I can put here, and we don't put double quotation marks. You put single quotation marks, and you put our character that we want to store in our char letter. So we put A. Now if I add here a system dot out dot print, I'm gonna type letter. Now this is gonna print the letter A. So if you run this, as you can see, we have output in the console letter A. So this is the char data type, and you may be wondering now, where is this useful? This can be useful in scenarios, let's say that you want to get the last key that was pressed by a user. You can use in that case char data type because it's good for that scenario. And next, let's look at and with the char data type, you cannot put multiple characters here. So if I put multiple characters, I have immediately an underline and says too many characters, in a character literally convert to a string. So this is very important to have only one character in a char. In a char, you can store only one character. Next, the next data type that you can use is Boolean, and a Boolean data type can have only two values, true or false, and you're gonna see Boolean data types used everywhere in your code. And usually you declare the name of the variable which is of type Boolean with is. So is active, or is playing, or is raining. So this is how you declare the Boolean variable. This is how you declare the names for the Boolean variables. So I'll type here is active, and this I will type in camel case. And camel case means that the first word starts with a lowercase letter, and the next words start with capital letter. So I'm gonna type here is active, and I'm gonna put equals. And now in this Boolean data type, you can put either true or false. Now if I put true and I go down here, let's put semicolon because it's expecting us to put a semicolon there. So if I type here system dot out dot print line, and I'll print is active, it's gonna output in the console true because our Boolean variable has the value true. As you can see, we have A and true. If I put false, if I run the code now, we get false because now our variable itself has the value false. So this is the Boolean data type, and this is very, very useful in your code, as you'll see. You'll use it in almost any type, any piece of code that you're gonna write. You are going to deal with Boolean data types. So these are the data types that you can use in Java, and excepting string, the other data types that we looked at, excepting the string data type, are called primitive data types, and this has to do with how they are stored in memory. So I'm gonna end this video now and see you in the next video. Now it's time to look at operations, and in Java we have some operations that you can perform, and for that I will create two variables. The first one is gonna be an int. It's gonna be called num1, and I will assign 5 to it, semicolon. And then the next one is also going to be an int, and this is going to be it's going to have the value num2, and it's going to have the value 3. Now the first operation that we can do, we can type here print system. I wonder if there is not a shortcut to type. Let me see. No. So system dot out dot print line. So now we can first add those numbers. So I can add num1 plus num2. So I can add those numbers. This is the first operation that we can do. So we get 8 because 5 plus 3 is 8. Next we can subtract, so I can put here num1 minus num2. So we have 2. Next we can multiply, so I'm going to press Ctrl D. And to multiply, use the asterisk sign. So now if I run this, you'll see 5 times 3. And you're going to see 15, okay. I'm going to press Ctrl D. We can also divide. So we can divide, we put slash, and we can divide 5 by 3. And it gave us 5 divided by 3 gave us 1. So it is not showing the fractional part. In order to show the fractional part, you need to declare one of the variables as a floating point number. So let's change this to float. Let's put an F here. Let's change this also to float to see how the result of the division looks. So if you look now we have 1.66, and now we are using float. So for our let me see if I put only int here and float there, to see if you still get the decimal part. So we still get the decimal part because one of the number is float and the entire expression. So the expression is something which returns a value. In this case, num divided by 2 is an expression because it returns the result, which is 1.66. And you can also check to see if something is an expression by typing, I think, Shift Control P. And if you click on this, so you have two options here. You can select num1 or num1 divided by num2, and that is going to, this Shift Control P, this shortcut, allows you to see what num1 divided by num2 is. What is a float, is an int. So if you press enter, as you can see, we have this pop-up which says float. So this entire expression is a float. It's returning a floating point number, which is this number down here, 1.666. Okay, but let's change it to a double to see, because I said that a double has a bigger precision. So let's change it to a double. So let's delete that and let's run our code now. Alright, so now we have 1.6060, so it's much, the precision is bigger than the precision of the float, so this is good to have in mind. Let's change this back to int. Now, one operator, which is, because those are operators, and the thing which does the operation is called operator. The ones on which the operation is applied, respectively num1, num2, are called operands. So this is simply their name. So the operands are the ones on which the operation is performed. The thing which performs the operation is called the operator. So I'm gonna type down here system.out.println, and I will type here 5, and now I'm going to introduce, I will introduce an operator which is not so well known outside the programming context. So I'm going to type modulus, this is how it's called, modulus, and it's a per certain sign 3. And what this 5 modulus 3 is going to give us is the remainder. So it's going to give us the remainder of 5 divided by 3. So if you run this, as you can see, we have 2. So this is the remainder, 5 divided by 3 and we have the remainder 2. So this this per certain sign is giving us the remainder. So but why I type 5 divided by 3? Let's type num1 divided by num2. I don't know why I typed that, but it's okay, it's still the same thing, only that previously I was typing the values literally there. Now another thing that we can do is let's press Ctrl D and let's change this to, let's say, plus, and let's put here times, let's say, or instead of time, actually let's put times 4. So we have num1 plus num2 times 4. So now if you run this, we get 17, because it first is doing the multiplication, which is 3 times 4, which is 12, and then it adds 5 to it, and that is 17. And as you can see, the multiplication is done for the first, because multiplication has precedence over the addition. But you can change the order of operation by putting parentheses around the expression that you want to have it evaluated first. So I'm going to put parentheses around num1 and num2. So now we have 5 plus 3, which is 8 times 4. So now if you run this, we get 32 now, because now it's doing first the operation inside the parentheses, and then there is multiply the result by 4. Alright, so those are the operations that you can do in Java. There is also something which is called abbreviation. So what you can do, let's say I can declare another variable here. So I will type here int, let's declare it down here, int, let's call it my number equals to 0. What we can do here, I can type here my number equals my number plus 1, and this will add basically to our number. This mathematically this is not correct, because you say my number is equal to my number plus 1, but what we're saying here is what we are adding to my number 1, and then we store the value in my number. And there is a shorter way of writing this. We can write this in the following way. So we can delete this, and we can put here my number plus equals 1, and it's the same thing. Let's put semicolon, and we can do the same thing for the other operations too. So, and we can put whatever number you want here. So you can put here 4, or so whatever number you want you can put here, and those are abbreviations. So let's change this to, let's say, here multiplication, division. Let's press Ctrl D, and let's also use modulus. And let's add a system.out.print between all of them to output the value in the console. System.out.print my number. And let's do the same thing for the next one. So I'm going to copy this line of code. So let's copy this. Ctrl C. Let's put a space. Paste. A space. Spaced. Again a space. Paste. Again a space. And paste. Alright. So now if you run this, alright, so we get in the output 4 and then get 0, 0, 0 and 0. And we are getting this because first we declare this variable my number and we assign 0 to it. After that we add to my number to the value 0, 4. So we have now in my number the value 4. On the next line we are subtracting from my number which has the value 4, 4, and that is going to give us 0. Then we're going to multiply 4 by 0 and it's going to give us 0. So my number now also has the value 0. Then we're going to divide by 4 and we're going to divide my number which has 0. So it's going to return 0. And then we're going to take modulus 4. So we take 0 modulus 4 and that is going to give us 0. So this is why we get 4, 0, 0, 0 in the output. Now you can also increment your variable just by 1 using what is called postfix and prefix incrementation. And to show you how that works, I'm going to type here my number. Let's type it down here and then let's reassign it. Let's put a value of 0. Actually it already has 0, but anyway, let's reassign 0 to it. And now if I add a print line here, so if I add system.out.print, and let's say that I want to increment my number by 1. What I can do is I can type my number, and this is called postfix incrementation because we are incrementing at the end of the variable. So we're typing here plus plus. So now if you run this, we get 0. And now you may be wondering why we get 0, because as I said previously that this is it's incrementing the value by 1. Yes, this is incrementing the value by 1, but it's incrementing, it first outputs in the console the value of my number and then it increments the value of my number. This is why you get 4. So if I add another system down here, .out.print line, my number now is going to output 1. So if I run this, now as you'll see we have 1. But because this is how postfix incrementation works, because I put here plus 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 at the end of my number. When system.out.print line, this line of code is executed, it first outputs the value of my number in the console, which is 0, and then it increments the value of my number by 1. So this is postfix incrementation. You also have prefix incrementation, and this has a different effect. This first increments the value of my number and then it returns the value of my number. So it's gonna increment it by 1 and it's gonna return the value 1. So it will be display 1 in the console. So now if I run this, actually let me put some text to make it clear about what we are doing here. So let's put here prefix incrementation plus my number is okay, even though it's looking weird this. And let's add up here system.out. Actually let's just do it like that. So this is prefix incrementation. Let's run this. As you can see, we have prefix incrementation and we have 1. So this time we didn't get like in the previous like with the postfix incrementation 0, and then we need to go on the next line to add system.out.print and to print the value, because this increments the value of my number and it also returns the value of my number directly here. And you can do the same thing using the subtraction operator. So you can type here minus minus, so this is also prefix decrementation now. So let's put here 4. So now if you run this, you'll see in the output prefix incrementation and 3. So we have prefix incrementation and we have 3. And if I use postfix incrementation, so if I put here plus plus, you'll see in the output 4, because that only increments the value, it prints the value and then it increments the value. So this is why I get here 4. Alright, so this is our discussion about operators, and there are other operators that we can use in Java, but in order to use those operators that are next, we need to first learn about if statements, because they are used in conjunction with the if statements, and we're gonna see what if statements are in the next videos. So before I end the video, let's clarify something, because I did a mistake when I typed this code, and the mistake is that and also this is also a mistake, because here it says prefix incrementation, but here we have postfix, we have the incrementation at the end. To be prefix, it should be at the start. So this is the first mistake. And the second mistake is that when I introduce the prefix decrementation, I didn't change the text to prefix decrementation. I kept the text incrementation, not the decrementation. So decrementation. So this is what we should say. So let's press Ctrl D actually to type here prefix, also decrementation, but not prefix, but postfix. Postfix decrementation, and let's change this to minus minus minus, and let's duplicate this line of code 2 times, and let's put here plus plus my number, and here plus plus, and I will change the text now to first to postfix, and this here I'm gonna change it to prefix. So this is what I should have typed for the first time, prefix, but now it should say incrementation here. Incrementation, and here also incrementation. Right, so this is what I should have typed first, because in this way this is the correct. We have prefix decrementation, we have postfix decrementation when it's at the end, postfix incrementation when it's at the end, and prefix incrementation when it's at the start. So now if you run this code, you'll get the corresponding answer. So you get prefix decrementation 3, postfix decrementation 3, postfix incrementation 2, prefix incrementation, and get 4. So I'm gonna end this video now and see you in the next video. So now it's time to look at the next operators that you can use in Java, but in order to use those operators, we need to first learn about the if statement. Therefore, I'm gonna create a new project, and I'll call this project control flow. You'll see immediately why. Java for the language, for the build system IntelliJ, make sure to have the JDK here, and let's let this add sample code check, because that is going to generate the main class and the main function. So click on create. We go inside the main class, we double click here, and we can delete this system.out.print line, hello world. Now, what is an if statement? Let's first talk about the flow of the program. So the flow of the program, let's press Ctrl Z actually to show you. Alright, so the flow of the program is linear. What that means is that the code is executed line after line. So if I have multiple print lines here. All of them are going to be executed one after another. So if I run this, as you can see, all of them are executed one after another. And if you have more code here, thousands, hundreds of thousands of lines of code, if you put them in this way, so you don't use if statements, you don't use, as you'll see, loops and all of that, that code is going to be all the code is going to be executed line by line. But we as programmers, we want to make the computer to make decisions. And with an if statement, what you can do is that you can break the flow of the program, which is linear, which is line by line, and you can say to the computer, hey, execute this particular section of code only if this condition is true. Otherwise, skip this particular section of code. So this is what you can do with an if statement. You can impose a condition, and based on that condition, some particular section of code is going to be either executed or is going to be skipped. So let's see how we can do that. So let's delete all of those system.out that we have here. Let's declare a variable, int, number, and let's assign 10 to it. Semicolon. Now, to use an if statement, we simply type here if, so we have if, and we put a space, and now it's expecting us to put opening parentheses and closing parentheses. But when you put opening parentheses, the closing parenthesis is gonna be added automatically. So if I press, if I put the opening parenthesis, the right parenthesis, as you can see, was added automatically. Now, inside the parentheses, we define our condition. So what condition we want to evaluate here? So I'm going to type here if number, so the variable that we define above, and now I'm going to use an operator called equal to. So we're going to put equals, so 2 equals. So this first equal is called the assignment operator, because what it's doing, it's assigning what is on the right to the variable on the left. And this is called the equal to operator, because this what is doing is checking what is, let me put here, let's say 10. What this equals to operator is doing is checking to see if the content of the if the content on the left is the same as the content on the right. So it's checking to see if this is equal to this. This is what it's basically doing. And if that is correct, I'm gonna put curly braces, and when I put left curly brace and I press enter, the right curly brace is gonna be added automatically. So if I press enter, as you can see on the line 7, I think, yes, on the line 7, let me check. Yes, on the line 7, this right curly brace was added automatically because I press enter. And now what we can do here, we can say I discovered what is the shortcut for system.out.println, so you don't need to type that all the time. You can simply type SOUT and you select this one. As you can see, you have SOUT, and select this one which says print a string to system.out. So let's select that, and we are going to say they are equal. So let's run this code. So we have the condition. If the condition evaluates to true, the code which is inside the curly braces is going to be executed. So we have they are equal. But let's change this variable to something else. Let's change it to age. So let's go refactor age. Let's change the variable, and as you can see, it's changed everywhere where it's used. So I'm going to type here age, and I'm going to press enter. Now I'm gonna put for the age, let's say 18, and now I'm gonna use another operator which is greater than or equal to. So I'm gonna put greater than or equal to. So if age is greater than or if age is greater than or equal to than 80, I'm gonna output in the console, you can vote. You can vote. And let's add another print line down here. Please put an X in the ballot. Alright, now what we are doing here again, we're checking to see if this condition inside the parentheses it's true. If it's true, the code which is inside the curly braces of the if, so all of this code is gonna be executed. So if I run this now, because we are checking to see if age is greater than or equal to, we get true back, and we get true because the variable age has the value 18, and we also get true because here we are checking if is greater than or equal to 18. So it's not greater than 18, our age, because it has 18, but it's equal to 18. So this is what this operator is checking. So let's change now the condition to, let's change the value of the variable to 17 to see what happens. So now if I run this code, now our code is not executed because the condition is false, and the code of the if, which is inside the block of the if you want, the block of code of the if, which is represented by the curly braces, it's skipped, it's not executed. But what we can do, we can add another thing called else. So I can type here else, curly braces, left curly brace, and press enter, and it's gonna add the right curly brace on the line 10, and I can type here SOUT, so the shortcut. Let's say you can't vote, please come. Let's put on the next line, and to put something on the next line you put \n, and I'll type here please come in, and I'm gonna put plus, and I will say 18. Let's put in parentheses 18 minus age, and that is gonna give us what age this person which tried to vote has. So if you run this, it says you can't vote, and then it says please come back in, and let's put years here. So let's put a plus, and let's put years, and let's also put here please with an uppercase letter. So let's run this again. So we get you can't vote, please come in 1 year, and let's put here a space because I don't like how it looks here. So let's run this again. Okay, so we get you can't vote, please come back in 1 year, and if I change this to, let's say 12, and if I run this, now the condition of the if is going to be again false, and it's going to execute the else part. The else part is always executed when the if condition is false, and as you'll see, when the if conditions are false, because as you'll see in the next video, we can chain more than one if in our program. So you get you can vote, please come back in 6 years, and this is correct because he has 12 years, and it needs another 6 years to wait in order to be able to vote. So this is what an if statement is. You can break the flow of the program, and now we can make the computer to make decisions based on conditions, based on if something is true or something is not true. And this is inherently very powerful. So I will end this video here, and in the next video we're gonna see how we can chain more ifs in our program. So see you in the next video. Now it's time to see how we can add else if statements to check for more than one condition. And first I will delete this code because I don't need this code. I will declare another variable of type int. It's gonna be called year, and it's gonna have the value of 2019. I'm gonna put semicolon, and down here I will type if parentheses year, so our variable year equals, so now we're checking if it's equal to 2019, we put left curly brace and press enter, and the right curly brace was added automatically. Next I will type SOUT, so the shortcut for system.out.println, SOUT, and I will type here the year is, I'm gonna put equals, and here I will type plus and our variable year which we declared above. And now I will use an else if to check for another condition. So I'll type here else if, and you can type yourself else if, or you can press this and it will add the else if with the curly braces and with the parentheses. So if I press on that, as you can see, it added the parentheses. We're going to put our condition inside the parentheses, and also it added the curly braces, the block of the else if. And here we're going to check for year equals to 2020. So 2020, we're going to check there. And if that is true, I'm going to output in the console the year is equals, and I'm going to put plus year. Else, we're going to type SOUT also, and we're going to say all conditions failed, because the else is going to be called only if all the conditions from above are going to fail. So I'm going to type all conditions failed. We're going to type here failed. Now if you run this, we get the year is 2019, because it first checked here if the year is equal to 2019, and it's true because we put it to 2019 in it, and it executed the block of code of the if, which is this block of code, and it outputted in the console this text by the system.out.println. If I change now the value to 2020, look what happens. 20, let's put there. Now if I run this, we get the year is 2020, because now this condition, of the condition of the else if, it's evaluated to true, and consequently the code of the block of the else if is executed, which is to print to output in the console the year is 2020. And let's put a space here, also here. And we can add another else if, so I can go here, I can type else if, and we put parentheses, and we push that down, so I'm gonna press enter. Actually, let's put curly braces, and now I'm gonna put that down there, and I'll put here curly braces, and you can put the else up here. And now we can put another condition, so I can type here year equals, let's say 2020, and if that is correct, I'm going to type SOUT, and the year is, let's say, equals space plus year. And now if you run this, we get in the output the year is 2020, because this condition is evaluated to true, and the code inside the block of the else of this else if is executed. But if I change this to 2020, if I run this, now this will evaluate to true, this condition, the condition of the second else if, and it's gonna output the code which is inside the curly braces of the else if of this particular else if that is here. And we can go even further. We can put another else if and another else if. There is not a limit to how many else if we can put. And we can also check if a value is not equal to something. So we can check if year, let's say that I want to check if here, and now I'll introduce another parameter called the logical NOT operator. And what the logical NOT operator is doing is switching the value of a variable from false to true and from true to false. And when you want to check if something is not equal to something, we put exclamation mark and equals. So now we're checking here if year is not equal to 2019, and that is gonna be true because the year is 2022. So alright, so we get in the output the year is 2022, and we get this because this condition evaluates to true. Our year is not equal to 2022, is not equal to 2019, and it's outputting the, which is now the value of the year is 22, and it's outputting in the console, it's executing the block of code of the if, and it's outputting in the console the year is 2022. This is why you get here 2022, because this condition, it's true. Our two operands, year and 2019, are not equal, and this is true. And now with this I'm gonna end our discussion about else if, and you can put as many else if you wish. And let me show you first now how we can use the logical NOT operator to switch a value from true to false and from false to true. So I'll declare here a variable called it's gonna be a boolean, so I type boolean, and it's gonna be called is active, and I'm gonna assign true to it. I'm gonna put semicolon, and down here I will type if is active. I'm gonna type SOUT. I'm gonna say the user is active. Else, I'm gonna say the user is not active. So I'm gonna say SOUT again, quotation marks, the user is not active. Now if you run this will evaluate to true, because this is equivalent to typing is active equals true, and it's redundant. We don't need to put it's active equals true, because it's active already has the value true in it, so it's implicit. You don't need to type this in this explicit expanded form. So because if you hover over, I think it's saying that it's equals active, it's saying it can be simplified to it's active. So let's simplify to it's active. And now if you run this, you will get the user is active. But look what can I do? I can put here if the user is not active, and now the value of the is active is going to be switched from true. Now we have true. It's going to be switched from true to false. So now if I run this, we get the user is not active, because now it changed the value from true to false. And generally you can put the logical NOT operator in front of any expression you want. So if you have here a variable, let's type here int, let's say int my number, let's say equals to 10, semicolon. And if you put the logical NOT operator in front of any expression, and an expression, as I said, is something which returns a thing. And if you put the logical NOT operator in front of any expression, it will switch the value from true to false. So if I type here if my number, so if my number, let's say, is greater than or equal to 10, and it's true, is 10, let's actually put a bigger number to make it more clear. So we're gonna put 20. And because I put the logical NOT operator in front, and I will put parentheses around the expression. Now this condition is true. So let's first output the code without the logical NOT operator. So let's run this, and we get the user is active. So let's put the user here, because this condition is true. But look what happens if I put this in parentheses. So we surround our expression with parentheses to treat it like a single unit, and we put a logical NOT operator in front of the parentheses of the my number, but inside the parentheses of the if. So we're going to put the logical NOT operator, and now I will run this. And now if you run this, as you'll see, it will say the user is not active. Even though my number is greater than 10, it's true, but it's converted from true to false. So this is what the logical NOT operator is doing. So I think I'm gonna end this video now and see you in the next video. Now it's time to see how we can nest an if inside an if or an if inside an else, and I'm particularly interested now in the else part because I want to have the output if the age is, let's say, 17 and 18 minus 17 is going to be 1, to say please come back in 1 year, not 1 year. And to do that I'm going to add another if here, so I'm going to put if parentheses, now the condition, if 18 minus age equals 1, so if 18 minus age equals 1, then it's gonna say please come back in 1 year, right? So let's put the curly braces, and now you have this inside the curly braces of the if, and let's change this from years to year. Else is gonna output like previously with the text years. So let's copy this and let's paste it here. Now if you run this code, now age is 12, so it will say please come back in, and let's put here years, because this will be executed if the age is if it is not 1 year until it can vote. So it says please come back in 6 years, and if I put 17 here and if I run this code, it says please come, let's put here back, please come. Okay, let's run this again, but now our logic is working, and you nested now, as you can see, and inside the else we nested another if and an else. So this is how you can nest if and else's inside else's or ifs. So I'm gonna end this video and see you in the next video, and let's put a space here. So let's run this. Okay, so now it looks more beautiful. Please come back in 1 year, is saying now. So now this condition is true. It's executing the else part, and we have our output. So I'm gonna end this video now and see you in the next video. Now it's time to look at the logical AND and the logical OR operator, but first let me show you the less than or equal to operator. So I will delete the logical NOT operator from here, and I will delete the parentheses around the expression. And I will change now the value here to 9 for my number variable, and now I'm gonna change the operator here to less than or equal to. So we'll put here less than or equal to. So now if you run this, we get in the output user is active because my number has the value 9, which is less than 10. But if I put 10, it will also be true because we're checking if it's less than or equal to. So we get the user is active. But if I put 12 here and I run this, now we get the user is not active because now my number is not less than or equal to 10. Now let's delete this and let's keep our variables. The only thing, I'm gonna change the name of this variable to score. I'll type score here. I'll put equal to 100. Now we'll start with the logical AND operator, and let's say that I want to check two things. I want to check if a user is active, and I want to check also if the user has the score greater than or equal to 100. And if that is the case, so if those conditions are true, I want to have the entire expression to return true, and I will open the next level in a game, let's say. So I'll type here if parentheses, and the first condition, score, is greater than or equal to 100. Now, to use the logical AND operator, we put two ampersand signs, and then we put our second condition, if it's active, equals true, but you know that this is redundant from our previous video. Now, what the logical AND operator is doing, so let's put the curly braces. So I'm gonna put left curly brace and enter to add the right curly brace. Now, what the logical AND operator is doing is checking to see if what you have on the left, the condition that we have on the left is true, if the condition that is on the right is true, only then the entire expression is going to return true. So again, the logical AND operator will only return true if both conditions are true, respectively if score is greater than 100 and is active equals true. And this can be typed like this because it's redundant. So now I will add the SOUT and I will say you opened the next level. Now if you run this, I should say opened here. You opened. So now if I run this, you open the next level because both conditions are true. But if one of the condition is false, the entire expression is going to return false. So if I type for the it's active false, let's now add an else here. Let's put curly brace, press enter, SOUT. So let's type SOUT and I will type you are at the same level. So now if you run this, now the else part is executed because both conditions have to be true in order for the entire expression to return true. This is how the logical AND operator works, and because its active is false, it executed the else part and it output in the console you are at the same level. And if you want to make more clear which condition, which expression is, where are the expressions, you can put parentheses around the expressions like this. But I think it's better to not have them in this case, in this particular case. Now I will end the video, and in the next video I'll introduce the logical OR operator. Now it's time to look at the logical OR operator, and the logical OR operator returns true if at least one of the expression is true. So let's delete this code because I don't need this code. I'll declare two new variables, int num1. In a real app you should use more descriptive names. I'm gonna assign 5. I'm gonna put semicolon, enter, int num2. I'm gonna put equals to 4, semicolon. Then I will type here if num1 is greater than 0. Now we're going to use the logical OR operator, and here to use the logical operator we put two vertical lines, OR, and our second condition num2 also greater than 0. Curly braces, left curly brace, and press enter, and the right curly brace is going to be added automatically. I will type SOUT, the shortcut for system.out.println, and I will say the condition is true. I will also add an else here, left curly brace, opening curly brace, and enter, and it will add the right curly brace on line 10. And I will type SOUT here, and I will say all conditions failed. Now if you run this, as I said, the logical OR operator returns true if at least one of the expression is true, and we have two expressions, num1 greater than 0 and num2 greater than 0, and we get the condition is true. The condition is true. So if I change this to -4 now, so now num1 is not greater than 0, but num2 is greater than 0 because it has the value 5. The entire expression is gonna return true. So if I run this, we get the condition is true, even though our second expression num2 greater than 0 is false, because the left expression num1 greater than 0 is true. The entire expression is evaluated to true. But if both expressions, or in maybe you have more than two expressions. If all the expressions in are false, then the entire expression is going to be false. So now, because I put here -5 and -4, and now we are checking if num1 is greater than 0, and num2 is which also checking that if it's greater than 0, because both now are having the value smaller than 0, then that is going to return false and it's going to execute the else part. So we get all conditions failed. So this is how you can use the logical OR operator. So now if I reverse this to 5, and if I run this, we get the condition is true because at least one of the expression is true. So again, with the logical OR operator, if at least one of the expressions, no matter how many expressions you have in your using the OR operator, if at least one is true, the entire expression is going to be true. And for the entire expression to be false, it needs to be, all the conditions have to be false. So I'm going to end this video now and see you in the next video. Now it's time to look at the next control flow statement that you can use in Java, and that is the switch statement. And first I'll declare a variable called time, and I will assign 10 to it. Then I'm gonna type here, down here I'll type switch, and in the parentheses we're gonna put our variable that we want to test. So I'm gonna put time here. We put curly braces, press enter to add the right curly brace on line 7, and now we're gonna test our cases. So switch time, I'm gonna type here case, and now the condition. Let's say time 10, and then we put a colon. And after colon, you put the code that you want to have executed. So I'm going to put SOUT, and it's going to say the time is plus time. And we can also put something else here. Let's say plus quotation marks \n. I'm gonna say time for a coffee. Alright, so after we put our code, we put break. So we put break, because if you don't put break, let me show you. So I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna put another case here. Let's say case 12, and I'm gonna add also SOUT, and I'm gonna say the time is plus time, and plus \n time for a run. Alright, if I don't put break here, look what happens. So what this switch statement will do, will test this value against the branches that we have here. So it will test to see if the value of time is equal either to 10 or to 12. If it's equal to 10, then it's going to execute the code which comes below of the colon here. So if I run this but without break, look what happens without break. Without break, the code is executed. All the code is executed. This is why you need to use break, because when you say break, you basically stop the switch at one branch. So you put break, and here you also put break, as you saw. Because if you don't put break, it will execute all the branches. So put break, and it will only execute one branch. So now if you run this, says the time is 10, time for a coffee. So now it's not executing also the second branch like it did previously. So let me delete this to show you. So now without the break, all the cases are executed one after another. So we need to put break here in order for that to not happen. Break, and here also break. break. Alright, let's press Ctrl Alt L, format the code. And you can have as many cases as you want. So let's put another case here. Let's say case, let's say 8. Let's put 7. Case 7. I'm gonna put SOUT. The time is plus time plus quotation marks /n is time to wake up. So now if you run this, we get the time is 10, time for a coffee, because it tested our variable here against this branch and it found it to be true. But if I change this now to 7, so if you run this, you get the time is 7, it's time to wake up. And you can also have a default case, so you can go here and the default is going to be executed if all the cases from above are not true. So you put default. I'm going to type SOUT. I'm going to say time to relax. So if I put here, let's say 2, and I run this, now all the cases are going to be not one of them is going to be true, so it's going to execute the default. And you can also put here a break too. So this is how you can use the switch statement. So let's make our switch statement more flexible by getting the input from the user instead of typing here the number, literally typing the number here. And to do that, we need to use a scanner. So I will type here private static. Actually, private is also an access modifier, but we didn't talk about access modifier. So let's use public, because at least we have talked a little bit about public. So public static, and we will see what static is in the future video. Scanner, we type here scanner, we will see what this in the future videos, but basically with this we can get the input from the user. I'm gonna put equals new scanner, and inside the parentheses I'm gonna type system.in. Now what I will do here, instead of putting 2, I will put here scanner dot next int, and now that this line of code that we have here, so let's put semicolon here, semicolon. Alright, so now this line of code that we have here is gonna wait now for the input in the console here, and it's gonna take that input, which is gonna be an integer, and it's gonna put it inside our variable time, and then we're gonna test that value against our branches that we have here. Alright, so let's run our code to see what happens. So let's run this code. And to make it more interesting, let's put also some text to say to the user to introduce to input some to input a number. Alright, so let's stop this. Let's close the and let's put a SOUT here, please, or we're gonna say what time is, or it is, what time it is. So now if you run this, it says what time it is, and now you can pass something here. So if I put here 2, it says time to relax, so it's executing the default branch. And if I run this again, and again it's asking us what time it is, and now we can pass input from the keyboard, as you can see, using this scanner that we have here, scanner.nextInt, and by declaring here above this thing. We're going to see what all of this is in future videos when I'm going to talk about classes and objects. So now here we're gonna say, let's say 10, or let's put 7, because we have 7 here for the case. But I didn't put a break there. Sorry, let's put break, otherwise it will break. So now if you run this again, let's run this again. What time it is? Let's put 7. And again, the time is 7. It's time to wake up. And I don't know why it opened the console again. So let's run this again. What time it is? Let's put 7. And again, the time is 7. It's time to wake up. And then it says process finish with x equals 0. And that means that the program successfully finished all the execution. So this is how you can use a switch statement. You can have as many switches, you can have as many cases as you want here. And it's important to not forget to put the break after you put the code that you, because here we can have, you can have a function which can do something. So you can call a function here and so on. But I keep it simple. I just output something in the console. So now I'm gonna end this video, and I will see you in the next video. And you also see in this video, you also saw in this video how you can get input from the user using the scanner and the scanner.next int to get integers. So I'll end the video now and see you in the next video. Alright, so there is one more thing that you can do with a switch statement, and that is that you can replace this switch statement with an enhanced switch statement. So if you hover over the switch, as you can see, it's colored in this yellow color, and if you hover over, it says switch statement can be replaced with an enhanced switch. So click here where it says replace with enhanced switch statement to see what happens. So now we have our code written like this. So we have case, and we have the case, then we have this arrow and the code which is going to be executed. Now if you run this code, everything will work the same. What time it is? Let's put 7. The time is 7. It's time to wake up. As you can see, everything works fine. And you can also put curly braces around the code that you want to have there. So you can put opening curly brace here and closing curly brace. And you don't need to put the break keyword in by this way, by using the enhanced switch statement. So this is very interesting. Let's put curly braces here also. And here you can also put curly braces. And with the enhanced switch statement, you should use curly braces when you have multiple lines of code. In our case, we only have one line of code, but if you have more lines of code here, more code here if you have, then you should use curly braces. So this is how you can use the switch statement. And as you can see, it's similar to the classic switch statement. The only difference is that you have case, and you have the case, so you have the condition, and then we have this arrow which basically says, hey, if this case, if the case is 10, this arrow is saying, hey, execute the code inside the curly braces here. So now I'm gonna end this video and see you in the next video. Now it's time to start a discussion about loops. And loops are used when you want to execute a particular section of code repeatedly. And we're gonna start with the first loop, and that is the for loop. So I'll go down here, I will type for, and while I'm typing, IntelliJ is giving us some suggestions, and we choose the first one, and if you press enter, it will add the parentheses automatically for you. But if you want to type yourself the parentheses, just put opening parenthesis, and the closing parenthesis is going to be added automatically. So I'm going to put opening parenthesis. Now inside the parentheses, I'm going to type int I, so we declare a variable now, and we're going to assign 0 to it. So this is going to be the starting value of I. It's going to be 0. Then we're going to put our condition. We're going to put I less than or equal to 10. So this loop is going to be executed 10 times. When it's going to reach 10, when it's going to reach 11, it's going to stop. So we're going to put again semicolon. And we're going to put here, because if you hover over, it says condition I less than equal to 10 is always true. And in order for that condition to be false, we need to increment the I. So I'm going to type here I plus plus. So we need to increment the I at each iteration. So we're going to put left curly brace and right curly brace. Now, inside the curly braces, we're going to put our code that we want to have executed 10 times. So I'm going to type here SOUT, so, and I'm going to put here I equals, and we're going to refer our I from our loop, plus I'm going to put I here. Now, if you run this, we get in the console output that I is 0, I equals to 1, I equals to 3, because this now is executing the code inside the curly braces 10 times. When it reaches 10, the value is incremented to 11, this condition is going to be false and the loop is going to stop. So this loop will execute for a specific number of times. So if I change here the condition to, let's say, 100, it will execute the code inside the curly braces 100 times. So if I run this now, we get 100 times our loop. So this is what we can do. So we have first the declaration, the starting value, then we have the condition and I++. And we can go even in the opposite order. So I can put here I equals to 100 while I is less than, or, and here I can put while I is greater than or equal to, let's say, 0, or let's put 1, or actually let's put 0. And now we can decrement I. So I can put here my I minus minus. So now if you run this, now you will see backwards the output. So get 100, then 99, because we're starting with the 100, we put the condition while I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. So at each iteration is gonna subtract 1 from I, so it's gonna be 99, 98, 97, 96, and so on until it reaches 0, and then it decrements again, and the I is gonna be probably -1, and this condition is gonna be false, and it's gonna exit the loop. Also, you can use, let's press Ctrl Alt L, you can use if statements here. So because I introduced now something called break. So instead, let's say that for whatever reason, let's say if I equals 50, I want to stop this loop. How could I stop this loop? So to stop the loop, you just simply put here break, and break is gonna, as the name implies, is gonna stop the loop. So when I is gonna be equal to 50, we're gonna put break, and our loop is gonna stop. So if we run this, get 51, and then it stops, because when it reaches 50, it stops, and you have 51 because this is you have decrementation here. Let's change it to 0. Let's change the condition to less than or equal to 0, and I++. So if you run this, oh sorry, it should be, so sorry, it should be here, let's say 50. So if you run this, we get 49, and 50 is not printed, because when it reaches 50, it incremented the I to 50, but in I it will be 50, but it will not execute this SOUT to output I in the console. So this is how you can use the break keyword in a loop to stop the loop. You can also use continue, and continue is gonna skip the code which comes after the continue. So if I put here continue, look what happens. If I run this, we have the same output, because continue, what it's gonna do is gonna skip all the code which comes after whatever code comes after the continue keyword. So the code that is down here is not gonna be executed. This is what continue does. And to show you more clearly how continue keyword works in comparison with the break keyword, I'm gonna change the condition if I equals to 50, because now if you look at the output, it is the same output like when you had the break here. So if I put break here, and if you run this, we have the same output. So it's not illustrating correctly what is the difference between continue keyword and the break keyword. So I'm going to change this condition now from I equals to 50 to I greater than equal to 30 and I less than or equal to 50. And I'm going to change this to 100. So now if I run this, we get our numbers, and when it reaches 30, as you can see, it's keeping all the numbers, and then it continues from the 50 because this is the condition that we're gonna put here. And now this illustrates better how continue works. So continue is keeping the code. It's not stopping the loop like break does. So I'm gonna end this video now and see you in the next video. Now it's time to look at the next loop that we can use in Java, and that is the while loop. So I'll delete the for loop because I don't need the for loop. And the while loop is used in situations where you don't know for how many times you want to loop, but you know that you want to loop until a certain condition is true. For example, let's say that you want to display a dialog while the user is typing something in an input. So in those scenarios, you use the while loop. Now, to use a while loop, you just type while. So you can press enter or you can type the word yourself. And you put parentheses, and inside the parentheses we put our condition, and then put curly braces. And inside the curly braces, you're gonna put the code which is gonna be executed while the condition is true. So as long as this condition is true inside the parentheses, the code inside the curly brace is gonna be executed. So let's say that I declare here a variable called let's call it int. It's gonna be of type int. It's gonna be called number. I'm gonna put equals and I'm gonna put 0 there, semicolon. And here we can put the condition while number is less than or equal to 10. We're gonna execute the code inside the curly braces. But now we need to increment the number because otherwise this will generate an infinite loop, because this condition will always be true because we have 0, and here we check to see if a number is less than 10, and we are not incrementing the number at each iteration. So now if you run this like this, you get nothing in the output, but the console is still running because now we have an infinite loop. So let's close this by clicking on the square red button. So I'm gonna hide the console now. So it's very important to make the condition false, and to make the condition false, we're gonna put number plus here, semicolon. So now if you run this, we get nothing because we don't output nothing, but now we don't get the infinite loop. So down here I will type SOUT and I'm gonna print our number. So now if I run this, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and get also 11. Now you may be wondering why you get 11, because the condition says that the number has to be less than or equal to 10, but we also got in the output 11. This is because when the number has the value 10, it checks to see if 10 is less than or equal to 10, and that was true. And because of that, now the value, as I said, is 10. It incremented the value, so it incremented, and now the value is 11. And then it output the value in the console. This is why you get here 11. Then it go to the condition again. It check to see if 11 is less than or equal to 10. Then that was false, and because of that, you don't see if after 11 nothing. The application is finished. So this is the while loop, and we're gonna use the while loop a lot in our code. There is also another loop called the do while loop, and the do while loop is gonna execute a particular section of code even though the first even though if let's say the condition is false, it will execute the code at least once, and it will execute the code at least once, even though if the condition is false. So what I can do, I can delete the while loop. So let's delete the while loop, and let's type do. So you put do, and we have curly braces, and here we put while, and here we put our condition. Let's say while number is greater than equal to let's say 1 or 0, let's say. Let's put 1. And now this here is false, but because now we're using the do while loop, the code inside the do, so let's put s out ut and let's print number. Now, because you're using the do while loop, the code is gonna be executed at least once, and then it's gonna check the condition. And if the condition is true, it will execute again. But you have this particular option with the do while, that the code is executed at least once, irrespective of the condition that is here. So if I run this, normally I should be able to output nothing, but because you're using the do while loop, we get 0 in the output. Because if you press Ctrl Z and we put the while loop, and put here while loop is let's say less than or equal to, okay, so let's say while the number is greater than or equal to 1, let's say greater than or equal to 1. Now, because this the value of the number is 0, and here we're checking to see if number is greater or equal to 1, this is not going to be executed. So if you run this, you don't get nothing in the output. But with a do while loop, so if I type here do, and here at the end of the right curly brace we type while, and you put number greater than or equal to 1, and we put SOUT here, number. Now this is gonna output at least once the value of the number, because I forgot the semicolon there. So let's put the semicolon. So let's put semicolon, and let's run our code again. Let's close this and let's run our code again. Alright, so we have, let's run it also again, because I click on this debug. So we get 0, because the do while loop, it will execute what is inside the block of the do at least once, irrespective of the condition. But what we can do is we can also make the condition to be true by incrementing our number. So we can put here while, and I can put here number plus plus semicolon, and now let's put while number is greater than or equal to, or let's put less than, or let's put greater than or equal to, let's put less than or equal to, let's say 10. So now if you run this, now we get our 10 numbers out in console. But again, previously when I had this, so let's press Ctrl Z a few times, even though the condition is false, the code is going to be executed at least once. So those are the while and the do while loops that you can use in Java, and you can use with the do while and with the while the continue and break keywords in the same way you use them inside the for loop. So you can use the break and continue keywords also in the while and do while loop. The break to stop the loop, and the continue to skip a particular section of code. So now I'm gonna end this video and see you in the next video. Now it's time to start a discussion about functions, but first let's create a new project. I'm gonna call it functions. It should be in Pascal case without spaces. For the language, select Java. For the build system, select IntelliJ. Make sure to have the JDK selected here, the version 17, and also check this box which says add sample code, because that is going to generate the main class and the main function for us. So I'm going to click on create now to create the project. Alright, now our project was created. Now let's open the main class. So double click on the main here inside of src folder. Let's bring this down. And now let's talk about functions. So what are functions? Functions are a line or lines of code which are grouped together to do a specific task. And so far in our videos, we already dealt with functions. The main functions, as I said in a previous video, is a function for which the Java compiler, when it tries to run our code, it's looking for this function in order to be able to run our code. The print line function that is outputting something in the console is also a function which takes some input and it outputs that input in the console. So we've already dealt with functions. Now let's see how we can create our own functions. And to create our own functions, I'm going to go outside the parentheses of the main function and I will type public. So first we type this public. This is an access modifier. Next we type static. I will explain to you what static is in the future videos. Next we type void. And void is the return type of the functions, because as you'll see, functions can return something, and void means that you don't return nothing. Next, we need to give a name to our function. So let's call it say hello, and this function is gonna say hello. Next, we need to put parentheses. As you can see on the top, both our functions have parentheses. And when you declare a function, we need to put parentheses. We need to put parentheses because inside the parentheses, you can define parameters which can receive a value when you call the function. But now we're not going to declare any parameter for now. And then we put curly braces. So we put opening curly brace and the right curly brace was added automatically. And I press enter. Now, what I can do inside, now I have a function. And it's called say hello. What I can do now is I can type here SOUT, so our shortcut, and I can type here say hello. Let's say hello Alex. So let's delete now this code because we don't need this code, and let's run our code to see what happens. Alright, so the console opened, but we don't have nothing in the output. That is because if you look at our function say hello, as you can see it's gray out, and if you hover over, it says method, because functions in Java are also called methods. And the reason is because they are part of a class, but we're gonna talk about this when we're gonna talk about classes and objects. Now, it says the method or the function say hello is never used. In order for our program to execute this say hello function, we need to call the say hello function from our main function, because as I said, the main function is the entry point. So when the Java compiler runs our code, it's executing the main function, and if the main function has code in it which needs to be executed, it will execute that code. If not, it will just finish the program without doing nothing, because we didn't type any code here. So now what I can do here, I can type say hello, and while I am typing, as you can see, we have suggestions. We have first SOUT, our shortcut, and we have then M, and M stands for method, or let's call it methods from now on. So our method say hello. So you can click on this one, and now it's gonna be called from our main function. So let's select that and let's press enter. Now what we're doing is we are calling the say hello function inside the main function. So now when the compiler is gonna run our code, it will execute the code inside the main function, which is to call the say hello function that is defined here. And you also have this one usage, and what this basically means is that it's only used here. This is why I think this is what one usage is saying. Now, if you run this, you get hello Alex, and you can change this text. You can change to hello Ioana. So now if you run this, because now when this code is executed, the main function is called, and the code inside the main function is called, and inside the main function we have another function, say hello, and this function is called, and the code inside the say hello function is executed, which is say Ioana. So let's change this back to to hello Alex. Now what we can also do, we can call our function multiple times. So I can type here Control D a few times. Now if I run this, we get hello Alex multiple times. So as you can see, what functions allows us to do is to divide our code into chunks of code which are reusable. So they can be called in many places, in different places, and in different scenarios. So this is how this is basically how you can write a program, because if you will just type all your code here, it will not make any sense. You have to have some kind of structure, and you have that structure using functions and if statements and so on. Now let's run this again. Now the problem now with the say hello function is that it's always saying hello Alex. It will never output anything else. Only if we change this text, it will display something else. But as I said, function, like you can see here, this function has a parameter. This is a parameter defined here, and you can also define parameters for our own functions. So I can type here string, so the type of the parameter, let's call it name. Now, as you can see, it immediately have added this underline here. We will see immediately why. Now, what we did here, we define a parameter name. So when we call this function, we need to pass a value to this function for the name. We need to pass an actual value, and we're gonna use this value inside our system.out.println. So instead of say hello Alex, it's gonna say plus, and I'm gonna type name. I'm gonna put another plus, quotation marks, and the exclamation mark. Now, what this is gonna do when you call the say hello function, it will receive a value for the parameter name, and then it's gonna say hello and the value which is passed to the parameter name. So if I put here, now if you hover over the parentheses, it says expected one arguments. So it's saying that it's expecting one argument, a value, but found 0. So in other words, it's saying, hey, you defined below here a parameter name. Now give me a value for that parameter, so I will be able to use it in your code. So to use it in the here. So I will type here, let's say John. So now if you run this, it's saying hello John. So now it's using the value that is passed here, and as you can see, you have also this name that it's saying the name of the variable, which is name. And we can call our function again. So we can press Ctrl D, and we can change it to, let's say Anna. So now if you run this, it will say first hello John and then hello Anna, because now for our second function, when you call it, the value is passed Anna, and when this system.out.print is executed, it's using the value Anna here. So this is how functions work. This is how you can define a parameter for a function, and you can define more parameters here. You can put another parameter here, and to define another parameter, you put a comma to our first parameter, and we type another parameter, let's say age. So we type int age, and now we have those underlines because now it's expecting a value for the age that is defined here. So we're gonna say hello Alex. Let's put plus, quotation marks. I'm gonna type your age is, and plus quotation marks, not quotation marks, sorry, plus age. So now this will receive a value for the name and for the age, and it's going to use that value inside the print line, and it's going to say hello, the value which just passed for the name, and it's going to say your age is, and the value which is passed for the age. So let's pass here, let's say 23, and for Anna, let's say that we pass here 26. 25, let's say. Now, when you run this code, you get hello John, your age is 23, hello Anna, your age is 25. So what it's doing here now, it's using the values that are passed here. These are also called arguments, the value that you pass to the parameters. So to the parameter name for our first call of the function, we pass John, and for the age we pass 23, and we got in the output hello John, your age is 23. For our second function, because functions are reusable chunks of code, you can call it again. When we pass different values here, we passed Anna for the name and for the age 25. Alright, now I'm gonna end the video and see you in the next video where we're gonna look at other things that we can do with functions. So see you in the next video. Now it's time to see how we can return a value from our functions. So I'll go down here. I will create another function, so I type public static. Now, to make the function to return something, we need first to say what you want to return. So after the static keyword, we put our type. So what type of data we want to return. In this case, I'm going to return an integer. So I'm going to put public static int. So compare this with the function that we have above. Above we have void, that means nothing, we don't return anything. Now we're having public static int, so this function is going to return an integer. Next we put a name, let's call it getMax. And this function is going to have two parameters, int num1, comma, int num2. And it's going to return the number which is the bigger number. Now, as you can see, we have an underline here and we say missing return statement because now we need to return something. But first let's check to see which number is bigger. So check, we type if num1 is greater than num2, then it means that num1 is the number which is the bigger number. So now we need to return that number back to the calling function. And to return, we type the return keyword and the value that we want to return. In this case, we want to return num1, which is the bigger number, num1. Else, I'm going to put here else, that means that the num2 is bigger. So I'm going to return here num2. Let's press Ctrl Alt L to format the code and let's delete those calls for our say hello function. Also, let's put a semicolon here. Now, if I call the getMax function here, so I type getMax function and I put two numbers, let's say 10 and 5, put semicolon. Now if I run this code, we get nothing. This is because this function, it's returning a value and we need to get that value, to put that value into a variable because it's returning a number. So you need to get somehow that number in a variable here and then output it. Because if you press Shift Control P on this function, so we select the function, as you can see, the whole function is considered to be an int because it's returning a number. This is why you have that pop-up which says int. Now, I'm gonna type here int max equals, so you put int max equals get max, and this is gonna return the maximum value. Down we type SOUT, and I'm gonna output max. And let's press Ctrl Alt L to format the code, and let's run our code now. Now we get 10. So our function returns the bigger number. And if you pass a different value here, let's say we put here 1 now, and if you run this, now we get 5, because what it's doing is taking whatever value are passed here for the parameters, here and here. Then it's doing the checking, it's checking to see if num1 is greater than num2, then it's returning that number, and if that number is the number which is greater, it's gonna be returned here by the getMax, and it's gonna be stored in the max variable. Then we're gonna output that variable in the console. Another important thing to know about the return is that after the return, after you return from a function, either by returning something or simply typing just return, the function or the structure in which you are currently in is gonna be left, it's gonna be stopped. So if I try to put some code below our return, let's say SOUT, let's say this is some text, we have this underline, then it says unreachable code, delete unreachable statement, because when you tell to the function return something, at that point it leaves the function and it's not executing any line of code which comes below of the return statement. So this is very important to have in mind. And if you just type return without returning something, it will have the same effect and missing return value. So let me change this to void to show you how even if you just type return, so so let's put here. Alright, so now we have it. So if you just type return, again it's saying unreachable code, because after you type the return keyword, either by returning a value or simply do just the return, is gonna stop the execution of the function. The function is not going to execute any line of code below of that. So let's press Ctrl Z a few times here to undo the changes. And let's also delete this because you don't need this. And if you want to return something else, you simply just change the return type here. So if you want to return a boolean type, you just type boolean here. You type boolean. And now we have an error because now it wants to return a boolean. If you want to return a char, you just type here char. So if you want to return a string, you put here string. And you will return a string value, but now we're returning integer, so that's why you have those in red. So it's up to you what you want to return, depending on what you're trying to do. So this is our discussion about return types, and see you in the next video. Now it's time to start a discussion about arrays, but first let's create a new project. I'm gonna call it arrays. For the language, select Java. For the build system, IntelliJ. Make sure to have the JDK version 17 here selected. And I'm gonna keep this checked, add sample code to have the main class and the main function generated for us. So click on create. Alright, now our project is created. Let's open our main class. Let's push this on the next line, and let's delete this code because we don't need this system.out.println. Now, what are arrays? Arrays allows you to store multiple values in a variable without declaring separate variables for each value. So, to declare an array, we type first the type. So, what kind of data you want to store in this array? Let's say that I want to store numbers, so I'll type int. And after the int, you put square brackets. And then we give a name to our array. Let's say that I'm gonna call it numbers. Then I'm gonna put equals, and I'm gonna put curly braces, and inside the curly braces we put our elements of type int separated by comma. So I'll put here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, let's use other numbers. So I'm gonna put 20, 12, 15, 60, 100, 200, 30, 50. Alright, so now we have an array of integers stored in this variable numbers. Now, how we can print those values in the console? We can use a for each in this case, but I'm going to show you also how to use the classic for later. But let's first print it with a for each. So we type for, we put parentheses, and we type here int number colon in numbers. So for every number in numbers, in our numbers array from above, I'm going to add SOUT. I'm going to print the number. So now if you run this, we have our numbers displayed in the console, so everything works fine. Now, one very important thing to know is that the index of the, so our elements, our integers, or our elements more generally, are stored at indexes, and the index of the elements is starting at 0. So 12 is at the index 0. So if I want to print the value, let's say 15, I need to type here SOUT, and I will type numbers, then square brackets, and now we need to use the index where that specific number is, and the index of 15 is 1. So if I run this, we get 15 because it's this line of code is getting the value which is stored at the index 1. And if we want another value, put here, let's say 3. So if you run this, we get in the output 100. Also, another thing that you can do with arrays is that you can get the length of the array. So I can type here a classical for loop. So I'll type for, and you can create this for I. You have this suggestion, and it's gonna generate for you all the necessary code. So if I press enter, as you can see, it generated all the necessary code. So for I int, if I press tab, it moves to the condition, and I'm gonna put the condition numbers, and you can get the length of this array. So if I put length and press again tab, and here I will type SOUT, and I will print I in the console. Not I, we're gonna print numbers dot I. So we are going to get the numbers at the index I, but as you'll see, we'll have a problem with this code. So now if I run this, we don't have any problem, but if I put less than or equal to numbers dot length, so now if I run that, now we get an exception. It says index 7 out of bounds for length 7. So it's saying that because our elements are stored at indexes, we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements, but the last index is 6, and when we put here for I is less than equal to numbers that length, we try to get the index, we try to get here the index 7 here in this line of code, and index 7 does not exist. So this is why we get this index 7 out of bounds for length 7. What we can do in this case, you can put less than without equal, and the code it will work, because it will get to the last element, and it will not go for the last index. Or you can put here less than or equal to numbers, but you can put here -1. So we're gonna subtract 1 from the length. So instead of having a number that length, let's say, which is 7, the length, we're gonna have 6, which is the index, the index of the last element. So now if I run this, we get on the output our numbers. And we can create another array. So I can go down here and I can type string, square brackets, to declare an array. I'm gonna call it names, or let's call it friends. And I'm gonna put equals, again curly braces, and here I'm gonna define some names. So let's say Maria, Alex, Pizza, Anna, John, Steve. Alright, let's put semicolon. So now we have another array of friends. Now if I want to loop through this array, I can use a for each. So I can use a for each, and I press enter. As you can see, actually let's press Ctrl G because I don't like the formatting. So for parentheses, for here I'm gonna type the type string, for string, so type here string, and I'm gonna type friend, colon, so for friend in friends, curly brace, left curly brace, and press enter to add the right curly brace or the closing curly brace. And I'm going to type here SOUT friend. And now it's going to display all of our names using the for each. So we get all of our names. So let's put actually a space between our code here. So let's put here print line, not print line, SOUT, and let's put question mark, and let's put backslash n. That's gonna add the space between our two outputs, because we have two different outputs here. One from the numbers array, one from the numbers integers array, and one from the friends strings array. So as you can see, now we have a space which was added by this line of code. And you can output the values in the friends array using a classical for. So I can type here for, and we have the suggestion, choose this one, it will generate the for you. And I'm gonna put for I equals 0, I less than let's say friends dot length, and that is gonna return us the length of the array. So for friends dot length I plus plus, I'm gonna put tab again, then I'm gonna type here SOUT, and I will type friends, and I will get the index at each iteration. So I'm gonna put square brackets I, and that is gonna return us the element at this specific index. So first the I is gonna be 0, we'll get the element Maria, then I is gonna be incremented to 1 and we'll get Alex, then I is gonna be incremented again and we'll get bits, and so on until it reaches the last element, the condition fails, and the loop stops execution. So now if you run this, so we get our numbers, and then we get our names output in the console. So this is our discussion about arrays, and you can use arrays with all the primitive types that we talked about, and also with the string as you saw here. So I'm gonna end this video now and see you in the next video. But let me tell you one more thing about arrays. What you can also do with an array is that you can create here, let's say another array, let's call it let's also an int, and you can put square brackets, let's call it numbers 2. And what you can do here, you can type new int, and you can define here a size of let's say 7 elements or 5 elements. And now if you want to add elements in this array, you can add only 5 elements, but you can add them using indexes. So you type numbers 2 index 0 equals, and here you define an element, let's say 1, and you put semicolon. And if I press Ctrl D a few times, now let's change this to 1, 2, and 3, and let's change this to let's say 4, 5, sorry, 7, and let's say 10. So this is another way to assign value to our array, and here I passed 5. This is the size of the array. So if I try to put, let's say another, I'll type numbers here again. Actually, let's press Ctrl D, again Ctrl D, again Ctrl D, and if you hover over, it says the overwritten array element variable is already assigned to this value. So let's delete this, and let's change now the index to 4, and let's put here 24. Let's type again numbers 2, and let's put square brackets, and I'm gonna put 5, and I will put equals to 100 semicolon, and now I'm gonna type the next index, which is 6, to see what happens. I'm gonna put index 6 equals, let's say 45. Alright, so if you hover over the 5, it says, so let's hover over. Alright, so it says array index out of bounds, and it's saying that because here we defined only that we're gonna create an array with 5 elements, and we added more than 5 elements. So this is why it's saying array index out of bounds. So we cannot do that. So because we already have 5 elements here, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So when we try to add here, let's press tab, numbers 2, and array 5 equals to, let's say, 9, immediately shows this warning, and it says array index is out of bounds, because we define that we're going to put 5 elements, and if you count what the number of elements we have here, we have 6 elements. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and because the size is 5 and we put 6 elements, we get this warning. So this is good to know. And usually you will not assign values to arrays in this way. You'll use the curly braces, because it's better. And you can also replace an element at an index. So you can use the index and you can put a different value in that index. Also, another important thing to mention is that after you created an array, so after, let's say, I created our numbers array, we cannot add new numbers in our array. Our array has a fixed size. So if I try to put here numbers, let's say, actually, I will not type the code, but if you try to put another element inside this array, it will not work, because if I type here numbers, and let's say that I want to put, let's say that I want to add something, and I call add. There is no add function for our array. Our arrays have fixed size, and the size is given by the number of elements that you passed here when you first created the array. And as you'll see in the future videos, we're gonna learn about arrays which can grow and shrink as you add elements to it. So that for now we're gonna use only those. So now I'm gonna end this video and see you in the next video. Now it's time to do a challenge using the knowledge that we have accumulated so far. Therefore, I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to call it challenge. For the language, Java build system IntelliJ. Make sure to have the JDK version 17 selected here. And also make sure to check this box to have the main class and main function generated for us. So now I clicked on create, and our project is going to be created. Now let's go on the left hand side on the project pane. In the front of this SRC, click on this greater arrow, this greater sign, and double click on the main class to open the main class. And let's push this on the next line. Now, the challenge is to create a function which receives as a parameter an array, and the function should an array of numbers, and the function should return the biggest number from that array of numbers. That is the challenge. So try to do it and then come and watch my solution. So this is my solution. So I'll delete this. I'll create a function, public static, and I'm gonna put int because we're gonna return an integer. I'm gonna call it get max, and it's gonna receive an array. So I'm gonna declare here an array of numbers. Then I'm gonna put curly braces, and first here I'll declare another variable called max, and I will assign the first element from the array in this variable max. So I'll type here numbers, square brackets, 0. So we'll put our first element there. Then I will loop through our array. So I'll type for, and I will use the for each loop. For let's type int number in numbers, and here we're gonna check if number, so the number at this iteration is greater than our max, then that means that we need to switch. We need to put our max, we need to put this number in our max variable. Then I'm gonna put max equals number, semicolon. And outside of the for loop, we're gonna return this number. So we're gonna type here return max, semicolon. Now if I go up here, I'll type get max, and I'll provide some numbers here. Let's say 4, 5. Actually, we need to provide an array. So let's create directly an array here. So we put curly braces inside so double curly brace, and inside the curly brace I'm gonna put 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I can do that. So let's create the array first. So let's type here int numbers equals, and I'm gonna put here 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, 9, 22. It should be an array here, and semicolon. Now let's pass those numbers here. Let's put a semicolon here. Let's store this variable. Let's store what the function is returning in a variable. So I'll type here int max found, if you want, equals to get max, and I'm gonna press Ctrl Alt L to format the code, and down I will type SOUT max found. So we're gonna output the maximum found. So now if you run this, the biggest number is 22. So get 22 as the biggest numbers, and if put here other numbers like 77, 100, 150, 0. If you run this, our program works. It returns 150, which is the biggest number from our array. So this is the solution to the challenge. If you have other solution, that is okay, because in programming you can find many solutions which can do the same thing. So I'm gonna end this video now and see you in the next video. Now it's time to start a discussion about object-oriented programming, but first let's create a new project. I'm gonna call it OOP. For the language, select Java. For the build system, IntelliJ. Make sure to have the JDK version 17 selected there, and also check this as sample code to generate the code for us. So click on create. Now project is gonna be created, and it was already created. Now let's double click on main, and let's start a discussion about object-oriented programming. So what is object-oriented programming? Object-oriented programming is a way of writing code in the way you think about the real world. So in the real world specifically, we have objects, and those objects have two major characteristics. The first is the state. Let's take for example a car. The state of a car is represented by the name of the car, by the color of that car, by the number of doors of that car, and this is called the state. Next, what objects in real life have is functionality. So a car, an example using the car example now, a car can move, can stop, can switch gears, and so on. So when you trying to write code, you will try to first create the state of an object that you're going to create, and the functionality that particular object has. And in the real world, if you want to build an object, you first need to create a template, a plan. And the template and the plan is used to create objects with that plan, but the plan is not an object, it's just a plan for creating objects. And in the plan you define the general characteristics, you define the state and the functionality that a car will have. And using this example with the car, we're going to create a class, and in programming for creating first the template, the equivalent of a plan in real world to a plan in programming, or a template in programming is a class. So we right click on SRC, we go to new and select Java class, and I'm going to call this class car. I will press enter, and as you can see, it added this public class car and curly braces. So now we have now we have the template of a car, but it's an empty template. Now you don't have anything written on these plans. Now to add to add first the state of a car, I'm going to type a few fields, a few variables. They are called fields in the context of object-oriented programming. So I'm going to type private string name, then private string color, private string or private let's put here private string model. So now we're creating the plan for creating a car, and now we're creating first the state representation of a car. Color and private string doors, but this should be an integer, the number of doors, so doors. Alright, so now we have the state of a car, but now how you're gonna use this thing that we have here to create an actual object? We first need to create a constructor, and as the name implies, the constructor is used to construct an object. And to create a constructor, you just type public, the name of your class, so car, parentheses, and inside the parentheses we define parameters. First is gonna be a string name, second is gonna be a string model, third is gonna be a string color. So with this, as you will see, with this constructor, we're gonna construct an actual object of type car. So string color and int doors. Now we put curly braces and press enter. So now those are parameters which are gonna receive a value. They are not storing this, they are not fields like the ones which are above here. Those are fields, those are the ones which are gonna store the state of a car. Those are simply parameters which their only job is to take whatever value you pass here and assign it to the field of the class. So what we need to do here now is to type this, and this is used to refer the current instance, and an instance is an actual object created with the model with the template car. So you're saying here, hey, assign to this dot name. So assign to this name, as you can see, it has this one usage, because now we are using this in one we are using this on line 8. So now we're using the field name, and the field name is the one which stores the state. I'm gonna put equals name. So the name that is gonna be passed to the parameter here name is gonna be assigned to the field name. As you can see here, it has also a different color. It has this this color because it's an intelligent way of telling you that this is a field. So let's put semicolon and do the same thing for the next one. So we have this dot model equals model, this dot color equals color, and as you can see, the fields are colored. This is how you can identify them. This dot doors equals doors. All right. So now we have a template. We have the state. Next, we need to, and this is the constructor. As you see, we're gonna use this to pass some values to the fields which are defined here, which are taking the value from the. So here when we're gonna create an object, we're gonna call this constructor, and we're gonna pass some values to those, to the name, to the model, to the color, and to the doors. And after that, the name, the model, and the color is gonna be assigned to this dot name. So it's gonna be assigned to the field name, to the field model, and to the field color, and to the field doors. Now we created the state. So now we have a template and we have the state. Next, we need to add some functionality. So I'll type here I'll type public, and this is a method because it's part of a class. So methods are part of a class, not functions. So I'll type public void. I'm gonna call it let's say move. I'm gonna put parentheses and curly braces, and we're gonna put here SAUT, and we'll say the car. I'm gonna put plus. We're gonna use this dot car, so this current this dot name. We're gonna type here. So the current name which is for this particular instance when this function is gonna be called, we're gonna say is moving. So we're gonna put plus quotation marks is moving. Punct. And you put that there. Then I'm gonna create another function, public, also void, is gonna not return anything, stop, and this is gonna stop the car, and we're gonna have curly braces, SAUT, and it's gonna say the car has stopped. And let's put also the car, let's delete this, the car and the name of the car, plus this dot. So let's delete this and type it again. So let's parentheses, and I'm gonna type the car plus this dot name plus has stopped. So the car has stopped. And those functions are gonna be attached to all the objects that we're gonna create using this template that we have now. So let's put semicolon at the end. So now we have a template. We have the state, we have the constructor, and we have the functionality, what this car can do. Now, we need to create an actual object using the template. And to create an actual object, we go inside the main class. The main is also a class, as you can see, and it has a function. But it's a function with this thing static. We'll see what static is in future videos. Now, to create an actual object with our template car that we created, we're going to type here car, and while I'm typing, IntelliJ is giving us suggestion. And it's mean, do you mean car, the car class that you created, that template? I'm going to say yes. So car, I'm going to call it Tesla, and I'm going to put equals. And here, to create a new instance, we type, and an instance is an actual object created with the car template. We're gonna type new car, so we create a new object now. Now we need to put parentheses, and now as you can see we have it's expecting us to pass some values for the name, for the model, for the color, and for the doors. And it's expecting us to do that because now we are calling the constructor. Those parentheses are calling the constructor that is defined here. So now this constructor is expecting some values for its parameters because it wants to assign those values to the fields name, model, color, and doors. So here I will type, but let's change this to car. And here I will type first for the name Tesla, which is a very nice car. For the model, and we're gonna put, and now we're gonna put a comma, and then we pass a value for the next parameter. For the model, let's say S played, and for the color, let's say black, and for the doors, let's say 4, not 3. And we put a semicolon. Now, what we did is we created first a template. This is the template for creating a car, which has states and functionality. And we also now created an actual object using that state, using that template, using that plan. We created an actual object which has some specific values for its fields. It has the name Tesla, the model is played, the color black, and the number of doors 4. And we can create another car. So I can type here car 2. You can give a different name if you want here, but I'm gonna call it car 2. I'm gonna put equals new, because with our plan we can create as many cars as you want. So I'm gonna put car, and for the name let's type Ford, and for the model Mustang, and for the color let's say red, and the number of doors 2. Now what we're having now is two objects, two actual instances, and this process of when you create a new object is called instantiation, because you are creating a new object. And now we're having two instances, two objects created with our plan car, with our class car that is defined here. So with the template, we build it to actual objects. Now I'm gonna end this video now, and I'm gonna continue our discussion in the next video. Now it's time to start a discussion about getters and setters. So what are getters and setters? Getters are used to get the value of our fields, and the setters are used to set the value of our fields. And we use getters and setters because we made our fields, respectively the name, the model, and the color, private. So they cannot be accessed from outside. In order to be able to interact with them, you need to provide getters and setters. And to provide getters and setters, we go down here and we go to code, we go to generate, and as you can see, it's given us some suggestions. And it's saying, do you want to generate constructor, getter, setter, getter and setter? So let's choose getter and setter. Let's use, and let's choose getters and setters for all of our fields. But first let me show you something. So now if I want to print, let's say the name of the first car, which is Tesla, I need to use what is called the dot notation. So I need to type car dot, but I don't have any name here as a suggestion when I press dot, because that name is private, so it cannot be accessed from outside of the class. Because the name is made here private, we cannot access it from outside. But if you generate getters and setters, so let's press Ctrl O, or we go to generate, go to code and generate, so Ctrl O. Actually, let's go to generate. We go to generate, Alt insert is the shortcut, and we choose getter and setter, and we choose getters and setters for all of our fields. And if you click on OK, now we generated all this code. And first we have the you have a getter, we have a setter, we have a getter, we have a setter. So we have now getters and setters for our fields. So now if I go here and I type car1 dot, and now I have get color, get doors, get model, get name, and those functions are called on this specific object that is created here. So if I want to output something in the console, now I can type here SAUT, and I can type car1, not car1, not called car1, car dot, let's say get name. Let's see what we get in the output. So now if you run this, we get in the output Tesla, because the car that we created here, as you can see, is also, as you can see, the second car is gray out, and that is because this variable car is never used. So this the IntelliJ is always helping us. Now we got the name Tesla, and if I want to get something else, let's say the model, color, and doors, I'm gonna press Ctrl D, and I will type here get, and instead of name, model, get color, and get doors. Get doors. Let's delete the last system not out. So now if you run this will display the value for the fields of the first object, which is Tesla, S plate, black, and 4 doors. So now if you run this, get Tesla, S plate, black, and 4. So car that get name is returning the name, car that get model is returning the model, car that get color is returning the value of the color. Because if you look inside the getters, let's look at the get doors. As you can see, this is a function which returns the doors, and which returns the number of doors for this specific object, because the function get doors is called on this specific object that we created above, that we created here. And we can call getters and setters for our for our second object. So let's add a line between our two prints. So let's put \n, and let's simply copy this code, Ctrl C, Control V, and let's change car now to car 2. So car 2, because now we're getting the value for the fields of the car 2. So now if you run this, as you can see, we have first Tesla S-plate black 4. So this is coming from our first object that we created above. And second, we get Ford Mustang Red and 2. And this is the values for our second object, which is stored in the variable car 2. So these are the getters. You can also use setters. You can use setters to change the values. So you can type here car, so our first object, dot set, and we can set a different name now. So I can type here, let's say, I don't know, let's say simply put here car. Now, if I go down here and I add here car, let me show you a shortcut to output something. Car dot get name dot sautil. Look what happens if I press enter. As you can see, it added our car dot get name inside the print line without us needing to type that. So now if you run this, we get Tesla S-plate black 4, then we get Ford Mustang Red 2, and we get car. So the value for our car, the value for our field name of our first car object was changed to car. So you can use the setters to change all the values, but again, you're not changing the value directly. You're not calling the property. You're not calling the field directly and you change its value, because that will break what is called the rules of encapsulation, which basically means to not let your code to be accessed from outside. With the setter, you just you pass the value. Let's say for the name, you pass a value as a parameter, as an argument, and then that value is set to the field. And in this way, you don't pass directly values. And here you can also add some checking here, some verification. You can put some code here if the name starts with a specific letter to not add it, and so on. So as you can see, you don't access the values directly from here, because you're using the setters to set the values and the getters to get the values. So you never access them directly. But if you make them public, you're gonna be able to access them directly. All right. Now I'm gonna go inside that main, and I'm gonna end this video now and see you in the next video. Now it's time to take a closer look at constructors in Java, but first let me show you how we can call the move and stuff function on our objects that we created. So we can type here car dot move. So now we're calling the move function on the car object, and car dot stop. And we can also do the same thing for our second car 2 dot move, and car 2 dot stop. So now if you run this without that, stop. So now if you run this, now get first we get the car Tesla is moving, the car Tesla has stopped, and let's change a little bit here to have a space. So let's run this again. So we have the car Tesla is moving, the car Tesla has stopped. So those functions are called on on this specific object, and then we get Tesla S-plate black and 4 for the fields, and then we get the car Ford is moving. So we have our second object, the car Ford is moving, the car Ford has stopped, and we get the value for our fields using the getters. So you get Ford, Mustang, Red 2, and car. Now let's take a closer look at constructors, and let's say that for whatever reason the person which creates this object doesn't want to provide values to all of our parameters. So here when you construct your object, when you construct your object using the constructor, I cannot I cannot let the last parameter unfilled because it will show an warning, so it expects a parameter. So what you can do is that you can create a first an empty constructor, and for that I'm going to type here public car, and I'm going to put only parentheses and curly braces. And now this empty constructor is going to call the parent or the first constructor, the constructor which does all the initialization. And we're going to pass for the name default, we're going to pass for the parameters default values. We're going to pass name, for the model, for the color, for the doors, we're going to put 0. So if somebody from outside the class creates an object and doesn't provide any value for our constructor, those values are going to be used for the constructor. So this, what is doing, is calling the constructor which is here. This is what this is doing. This parenthesis default values is calling this constructor. So now if I go here and I create another car, but let me delete this code because it will make things confusing. So let's delete this code. And if I go down here and now if I delete all the values for our car too, as you can see, everything is fine. Let's press Ctrl Z because I need to output in the console the values for car too. So let's delete those. Let's delete this. So now let's delete the values inside the constructor. Alright. So now if you run this, as you can see, you don't have an ordering now because now it's using this constructor that we have here, which is an empty constructor which is calling the constructor from above and it's passing the default values because now here you're not passing any values for the constructor. So now if you run this, we get the car name is moving, the car name has stopped, and get name, model, color. So we get our default values because the empty constructor is called and the empty constructor is calling the constructor that is defined here. So we can also go and we can create another constructor here. So I can type here public and provide the value only for the name, public car, and I will type string name. I'm gonna put curly braces, and now I will type this, and I will pass the name, which is gonna be passed here. And for the next value, I'm gonna provide default values. I'm gonna type color. Sorry, model should be model, color, and number of doors 0. And I can do the same thing with another constructor. So I can provide another constructor and provide values only for the model and color. So model, string model, and here instead of passing this default value, we're gonna pass model. And I'm gonna show you how all of this works immediately. Model, semicolon, here and here. And here we have name, it should be this one, name. Alright, and now let's press Ctrl D. No, it's not working. So let's copy this and let's paste it here. So now I'm going to provide the value for the model and a value for the color. So we're going to type here string color. So I'm going to type here color and model, semicolon. And now I can copy this and I will call the first constructor, which is gonna, but I don't need to do that because that we already have a constructor which provides values for all the fields. So if you create your object and you want to provide only the name, you provide the name is going to be assigned, and the rest of the fields are gonna have those 3 field values. If you provide only the name and the model, then the color and 0 is gonna be the color, and the number of doors is gonna be color, and 0 is gonna have those default values. And if you provide the name, the model, and the color, but not the number of doors, it's gonna have the number of doors 0. So if I go here and look, if I put here Ford, now if I run this, now it's using the constructor with so we have Ford, model, color, so it's using this constructor. What is that constructor? So it's using this constructor here, because now we're passing a value, name for our class, and the next ones are defaulted. And you can do here, provide another value, say the model Mustang, and now it's gonna use this constructor, which is here, this constructor, and it's gonna get the name that we typed, the model that we typed. It's gonna pass them to the primary constructor, to the parent constructor if you want, and for the color and doors, it's gonna have those default values, and so on. You can provide name, model, and color, and for the doors, it's gonna be 0. So this is how you can use multiple constructors with your classes, and I will see you on the next video. Now it's time to start a discussion about inheritance. So what is inheritance? Inheritance basically means creating a class using another class. You know, you may be wondering, why is this useful? This is useful, let's say that you want to create a class B, which is slightly different from a class A. And let's say that the class A has a lot of fields and functions which are particular to that class A, because it's representing something. And instead of creating a class B and adding all the fields and functions and methods that the class A has, you can inherit all of that, and on top of that, you can add new functions and new fields which are specific to the class B, but they are not specific to the class A. So this is what inheritance is. Therefore, let's go down here. And as you can see here, I deleted the car class because I create the car class inside this file. So I'll type class car, and it's gonna have a few fields: private, string, name, private, string, model, private, string, color, and private int doors. Now let's generate a constructor. I'm not going to generate getters and setters because we're not going to use them. So let's generate a constructor for all the fields. Now down here, let's create, but let's add 2 functions here. Let's say let's type public void move, and it's going to say SOUT, it's going to say the vehicle. Let's put here plus this dot name is moving. And now I'm going to create another function, public void stop. It's not going to take any parameters, it's not going to define any parameter, and it's going to say SOUT the vehicle has, let's put here vehicle plus the name, this dot name, the vehicle has stopped. Now let's create another class called plane. So I'm going to type here class plane, and type here private string name, private string model, private string color, private int doors, and private int engines, because the plane has more than one engine. Let's generate the constructor. So let's go to code, generate constructor for all the fields, and let's copy those two methods that we have here, and let's define for the plane too, for the plane also. Now what we have now is first is that we have code repetition. So we have both classes. We have the function move and the function stop, and we also have fields which are common to those to the classes. Both classes have a name, both classes have a color, both classes have a model. And it doesn't make sense to put all of this code inside of each class. It makes sense to create another class called, let's type here class, and this could be gonna be called vehicle, which is gonna represent a generic vehicle. This is what it's gonna represent. And here I'm gonna define some fields which are common to all the vehicles. So I'm gonna type here private, first name. All the vehicles have a name, so private string name, and let's say private string color. So those are fields which are common to all of the vehicles, which are common to also to the car, and also are common to a plane. So let's generate a constructor for our vehicle. So let's generate constructor. And all the vehicles are gonna move, so they are gonna move in specific ways. But you know that all vehicles are gonna move, so you can put here the move and stuff method. And what I can do now here is I can delete those. So I can delete those. I can delete those here also. And now what I can do, I can type here extends. So to inherit from a class, we type the extends keyword, and you type here vehicle. So you put vehicle, and now as you can see we have an underline because it's expecting to pass values to the constructor of the class from which we are inheriting. So it's expected to pass some values here. And because the name and the color are defined as fields inside the vehicle class, we're gonna delete them from our so the name and the color is gonna be deleted from our class because they are gonna be used by the super class. So I'm gonna delete that. We're gonna name and so I'm gonna type here super, and now I'm gonna call the constructor of this class from which we are inheriting, and we're gonna pass the name and the color. So look now how small our class has become because we're inheriting all of that. And you can do the same thing to the plane class. You can inherit from the vehicle, extends vehicle, and again it's expecting some values too. So let's delete the name because all vehicles have a name and all vehicles have a color. And let's just let the model and doors and engines, because not all vehicles have doors, not all vehicles have engines, but a plane has the doors and a model and engines. Now let's delete those from here. Let's delete from here. So super means calling the constructor from the parent class from which we are inheriting, from the super class if you want. So I'm gonna pass to the super class the name, which is passed here as a parameter, and the color, as you can see. Put semicolon. Now look at this code, how beautiful it is. So we inherited the state and functionality which a vehicle has, and we inherited that in our car vehicle in our plane vehicle. And now what I can do up here, I can go up here and I can type car. Let's call it car. It's gonna be equal to new car. And now we're gonna expect some values. First it's gonna be the name, again Tesla. And let's put for the model S plate. And for the color, let's say red. And for the doors, let's put 4. Let's create another class, and now let's create a plane class. So plane equals new to create a new instance, plain, and I'm going to pass some values here. Let's say buoying. And for the model, I don't know what model. I'm going to type here simply model. And there's going to be, let's say, white and let's say white and blue. And for the doors, let's put, I don't know, 9. And the number of engines, let's say 4. I don't know if this is the correct number, but I'm just passing some values. Now, if you go down here and you type car dot, look what we have. We have the function move and stop. So we can call the function move and stop even though they are not declared inside the car class. But because they are declared inside the super class, we can use them inside our own class. And we can do the same thing for plane. I can type here plane. So let's actually call them. So car dot, let's pass move first, car dot stop, and let's say plane dot move and plane dot stop. So now if you run this, we get the vehicle Tesla is moving, then the vehicle Tesla has stopped. So as you can see, it's using the functions defined in the parent class, in the class vehicle, and it's saying the vehicle Tesla is moving and the vehicle Tesla has stopped. And then it says the vehicle Boeing is moving and the vehicle Boeing has stopped. Now what we can do is that we can override those functions. So we can override those functions inside our let's say like I want to override the move function inside the plane class because the plane is moving in a specific way. What I can type here, let's press Ctrl O, and I can, as you can see, override move and stop. So let's override the move, and super.move means call the super method from the class from which we are inheriting. And I'm gonna add here a SOUT, which is gonna say moving by flying. So what we did here is we took the generic behavior which a vehicle has, which is simply moving, and we added some new functionality, some new behavior which is particular to a plane, because the plane is moving by flying. So now if you run this, look what you're gonna see in the output. We have the vehicle Tesla is moving, the vehicle Tesla has stopped, then we get moving by flying, so we get this call, and then it's using super.move, so it's calling the function from the parent class, from the class from which we are inheriting. And as you can see, we have this override here, so we overriding that behavior, and on top of the moving behavior that the generic class provides, we add some new behavior. And in a practical case, imagine that you have a view in Android and you want to build, let's say, a round button. You can inherit all the functions and fields and all that logic which makes a view to appear on the screen, and you can add some new lines of code, some new logic, some new fields, some new behavior, and some new methods, which are gonna take that view, and on top of that view is gonna change it in a particular way to make it a button. So this is the power of inheritance, and is very, very, very used in Android, particularly in Android programming. So now I'm gonna end this video and see you in the next video. Now it's time to start a discussion about the static keyword. So I'm gonna go inside the car class, and what I will do now is I will create a function public static void. It's gonna be called display data. But let's first remove the static to show you how the static keyword works. And we go back inside main. Now, in order to call the display data function, we need to use an instance. We need to use an object created to our class in order to call the function. So if I type here card to that display data, I can use it. But without an instance, I can't call that function. So let's actually delete this code. This code also. Let's delete this object. So now if I type here car dot display data, as you can see, I can call it because I have an object and the functions are, the methods are attached to this object. What you can do with the static keyword, so if you declare this function as public static, is that you can call this function without an instance, without you needing to create a new object. So I'm gonna say display data. So now if I go inside main, now if I type car dot, and I have the stop and move functions and the getters and setters, but the display data is not here. So, and to use the display data function, what I can do is I can type here car, so the class, and now I have the function display data, because what the static keyword does is it's making the function to belong to the class and not to an instance of a class. So it will belong to the class itself and not to an object created to the class. As you can see here, you just type the name of the class and display data. And you can do the same thing with variables. So I can type here public static, let's say string text equals text. And now if I go here, what I can do here is I can type car dot text. So now I can access those without creating an instance of our car. We just call them on the class because they belong to the class and not to an instance of a class. They are also called class variables and class functions. And those which don't have the static keyword are called instance variables and instance methods. So this is how you can use the static keyword. And scenarios where you can use it, let's say that you want to have some constants. So you can create a class, again you define your constants in that class using the static keyword, and then you call the class and the constants that you want to use. So now I'm gonna end this video and see you in the next video.